into a brand new episode of the Brickyard Podcast. We are coming to you live on a Tuesday night, and it is currently 10:44 Eastern Time, and we are here to debrief everything that happened in the NBA Finals so far. We just had Game 3 happen last night, have Game 4 tomorrow. Then we are also continuing our series of previewing every single NFL division, giving you our thoughts on where we think their records are going to be, and picking every single game for every team in the NFL. We're not just going to give you our takes on the Cowboys and the Chiefs or Josh Allen on the show. We're going to go over every team, but yeah, it's going to be a great show. A lot of news to cover, but we are coming off another huge NBA Finals game, and this is shaping up to possibly being another historic NBA Finals.
Yeah, and it's been great so far. The Knicks took the first two games in San Antonio, and then with President in attendance, half asleep most of the time, but the Spurs get the win in game three. Wemby has a huge game in that game, has 32, 3 blocks in that, plays well. But so far, it feels like the Knicks have had the advantage so far as containing Wemby the first two games. Jalen Brunson had some big games in there as well. But overall, I'm excited to see how the series plays out. But what are your takeaways the first couple of games?
Yeah, so for the first couple games, like we saw San Antonio struggle a lot, and they definitely looked like a young team, which I thought was the scariest part of it for the New York Knicks, because I think for a young team to come out at home and seemingly half of the crowd being Knicks fans, the Knicks fans being louder than the San Antonio Spurs fans, definitely has to be a little bit jarring, especially for a team this young. And the Knicks are probably the best team that they've played in the playoffs so far, and the Spurs have gone through a lot of learning curves, whether it was losing the first game to Minnesota, then coming back and winning that series, falling down 3-2 to the Oklahoma City Thunder, but each time they haven't panicked and they've learned from it. And I think the scariest part for the Knicks is that the Spurs really shot themselves in the foot at home, not only with the turnover battle, but it was just straight up missing free throws. I mean, the first two games, if they just hit a couple more free throws, they would have easily been able to take care of both those games at home. And then they had the ball at the end of it, and Victor Wembanyama just straight up missed a shot at the end of game two, and you're going to take that shot every single time. But he also threw the game away at the same time and made a critical mistake. And I do think we've seen players like Stephon Castle start out the Oklahoma City series with the turnover bug, and then slowly as the series went on, they settled in and started to correct it. And when you have a player who's as good as Victor Wembanyama, someone who is as good on defense as Stephon Castle, and then someone like Dylan Harper who can just come in, seeming like Darren Fox is coming alive for you, this is shaping up to be, I think, a really interesting series where everyone just gave it to the Knicks after the first two games. And I think anytime that does happen, you have to look at it with a little bit of skepticism the other way. It's like if everyone's just saying that the Spurs should be written off, I don't think you're telling the whole story, especially in a game where it essentially came down to one possession in the first two games, and the Spurs kind of shot themselves in the foot. So all they need to do is not shoot themselves in the foot, and I do think the series goes seven.
Yeah, I definitely think to go seven. I think next game we're going to see it tie up. But ultimately, another thing from the Spurs was in game one, they were horrible from three. They only shot 26%. And then a lot of turnovers, like you mentioned. And then also, as well, I think the thing that they adapted with in game three was containing Karl Anthony Towns, held him to 11 points. Jalen Brunson started to get a bit of the turnover bug as well, kind of playing a little bit of hero ball. So I think at this point, the most of the pressure is going to be on the Knicks, given how excited the city of New York is, how loud and vocal they've been. So that's a thing that I think is honestly a disadvantage to the Knicks at this point. And then for the Spurs, if they could just contain the turnovers, Steven Castle doesn't have those turnovers he has in the first two games. They're better from the free throw line, and they're shooting better. Last game, it was definitely neck and neck, but the Spurs outshot the Knicks ultimately, which helped them out, and didn't have left turnovers as well. So if they can continue that, then I think the Spurs will tie the series, and then eventually come to Game 7. We'll see what ends up happening, but I think this is a 7-game series.
Yeah, and the Knicks took 35 late clock shots in Game 3 alone, and that was tied for third most in the last 7 seconds of the shot clock for any game this season.
That's
So
free throws,
this,
you said?
no, this is they had 35 late clock shots in Game 3, and this was tied for the third most shots in the last 7 seconds of the shot clock by any team this season in a game. So
Oh my
that's
God.
definitely a huge testament to the defense that the Spurs were playing because this game, what I thought watching the first two games, and Jason Timp brought this up on his show, but Wemby hasn't really been able to just play isolation ball and drive, and you've seen it in this game in the first two games where they weren't as frenetic, they weren't passing as well, where game 3 it looked more like Spurs basketball where they were creating a lot of shots off of action. You started out the game alley-ooping the ball to Wemby, and then he got most of his shots off of assists, so there wasn't a ton of iso ball, and I do think the Spurs suffer when it becomes Wemby going one-on-one, and the Knicks have been able to figure it out where I think they are a lot better when you have De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle just breaking down the defense along with Dylan Harper here, because on defense, like you had a issue with the referees where there was a huge discrepancy in the fourth quarter, but honestly, I just thought it was because the Knicks were fouling the Spurs and the Spurs were trying to get to the free throw line every single time. And I think the difference between the end of game this time and the past two, where instead of Wemby trying to force something at the end of the game, you had De'Aaron Fox with the ball in his hands, and he had a pretty poor shooting performance, but he came up with the biggest shot in the game. And then Stephon Castle probably had the shot that iced the game when he hits that bomb three from Victor Wembanyama when the shot clock was running down. So I do think I would much rather see Wemby get his points and opportunities off of action created by Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper and De'Aaron Fox, where when they start going ISO, it reminded me of the Celtics a little bit in the first two games when they start to panic and then everyone just starts driving to the rim, creates a bad shot that creates turnovers and then helps the Knicks get momentum.
Yeah, I think that's a good breakdown there. As far as the next 4 games, right? The next game is at Madison Square Garden. Do you see this series moving in the Spurs' direction where they take game 4 and then go back to San Antonio? How do you see the rest of the series playing out at this point?
Yeah, I do think they can win game 4. Right now, if I had to pick, I would say the Knicks are going to win. But I do think that the Spurs can push it 7 games, even if they fall down 3-1, just with how young they are on this team, because they're on a pretty historic pace, at least defensively, as far as what they've been able to do with Jalen Brunson, where Jalen Brunson's getting double teamed. They're trying to wear him out. There's times where the San Antonio Spurs are playing full court pressure or they're pushing him all the way up to half court. And when Jalen Brunson isn't dominating the ball, you have players like Josh Hart just turning the ball over. Karl Anthony Towns has not scored a point in the fourth quarter in this series, which is a huge problem. And then Mikal Bridges has these games where he just doesn't show up. Like, no one knows where Mikal Bridges is. He has 2 quick fouls in game 3, and then he disappears until there's like 4 minutes left in the second quarter. But I do think the biggest challenge for San Antonio is going to be stopping OG Anunoby, and he has been the real difference maker for the New York Knicks in this series, where last game he looks pretty unstoppable, especially when the San Antonio Spurs go with that 4-guard lineup when you have Champagnie, Harper, Castle, and De'Aaron Fox with Wembanyama, because I mean, OG Anunoby's just bigger and more athletic, and that's where the Knicks have thrived in this series, where when Wemby is boxed out, the Spurs have had some trouble rebounding the ball, and they've also had some trouble shooting free throws. So as long as they can clean up the rebound battle and just hit more free throws, I think they can win game 4, but my suspicion is they go down 3-1 and then win the next 2 games. against the Knicks and push it to Game 7 in San Antonio. Because if the Knicks lose this series, this would be the first time that a team would go up 2-0 after winning the first two games on the road and lose the NBA Finals. And if there's any franchise who could do it, why not the Knicks?
Why not the Knicks? And then also think about, let's say that they go down 3-1, and then Wemby, to win his first title, comes back from 3-1. What's the biggest accomplishment that LeBron has ever done? Granted, the Knicks did not win 73 games, but they won 53, and they're a damn good team, won 12 consecutive playoff games, a historic run to the finals. To do that, his very first finals, to come back from 3-1 to win the NBA Finals against the Knicks, that would be setting the table for who could potentially be in the GOAT conversation 10 years from now. That would be, I mean, the NBA, is it scripted? We don't know. But as far as a poetic ending to the 2026 season, going back, going down 3-1 and winning the series, that's some shit they write in fucking sports movies.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with this series is this is the first time in NBA history. This is only the second time in finals history that the road team won the first 3 games of the series. The only other time that happened was when the Chicago Bulls went up 2-0 against Phoenix, and then they lost their first game at home.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
We're going back to the Jordan era.
Yeah, going back to the Jordan era all the way in 1993. And then as far as the home court disadvantage, the Spurs became the first team in NBA history to lose the first 2 games of the finals at home and then win Game 3 on the road. No team in NBA history has ever lost their first 2 home games and then gone on to win the championship. And then by winning Game 3, they also snapped the Knicks' 13-game winning streak, which was the second longest in NBA history, too. So a part of you is like, well, were the Knicks just due for a loss in this game is the part that a lot of people are thinking of. But with this game, were they due for a loss, and is Jalen Brunson having the 3rd highest usage rate in the playoffs in NBA history going to catch up for him? The only other usage rates higher than Jalen Brunson's usage rate this postseason run has been Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant.
Oh, God. Damn.
That's it.
Did they end up winning the finals? Did it say?
Yeah, so they went on to win. I mean, Jordan has never lost the finals, but like Kobe went on to win the finals as well. But Jalen Brunson is shooting pretty poorly from the field right now. I mean, if you take a look at Jalen Brunson's shooting percentage, he's shooting like 33% right now.
Yeah, in this series, yeah. Yeah, in the finals he's shooting 37%. And he's also averaged 4 turnovers a game too, on top of that, while also getting into foul trouble last game as well. So he has definitely been struggling there. I mean, the biggest problem that we have with the Knicks over the last couple of years has been Jalen Brunson being kind of the main workhorse, but then also them going through these tough series, grinding out, and then ultimately kind of fizzling out at the end. In this case, I think they'll be fine. I do think the Knicks are still in position. They definitely have the advantage so far in the series, but will the Spurs catch up to them? And I think ultimately my prediction is Game 4, the Spurs win. And then I wouldn't be surprised if the road team just wins every single game up until Game 7. And then Game 7, it kind of depends on how these next couple of games play out. But seeing the road team win every single game up until Game 7, I think is what we could be in position for.
Yeah, and this feels like one of the most evenly matched finals that we've seen, and the past 2 years have both been really evenly matched. When you think about Indiana versus Oklahoma City, and then San Antonio versus the Knicks, and this series, both teams have just been going back and forth. They're both on a historic pace. The Knicks led all playoff offenses with 54 points in the paints per possession, where the Spurs have the best rim protection in the league, only allowing 40.9 points per game. So you're literally having a unstoppable force meet an immovable object. And the scariest thing I do think is how young the Spurs are, and they weren't rattled, and it seems like they just have the confidence to come out there and do that. And Victor Wembanyama is definitely figuring out how to play well against this Knicks team. And I think with how well Stephon Castle has been playing, we're still due for like a huge game from Vassell, Champagnie, and Keldon Johnson. And I think you're going to get consistent minutes from Harper, and Fox will continue to get better each series. It's like that, I think, is the scariest thing for the Knicks is how close the first two games were, and the Spurs just handing it over to them. Like Wemby just throwing it away at the end of it. And if he comes back from that moment and goes on to win the finals, like if he loses this, the ramifications are he's not the GOAT because you're going up against Michael Jordan's perfect record in the finals, and I don't think he'll ever be able to get past 6 rings, so people will definitely hold that against him. So like it is his first finals and they're a young team, but it still does have a lot of historic weight for Victor Wembanyama if the Spurs don't win the series. I don't think it's necessarily fair to do that, but the media will still use it against him.
Yeah, they definitely will use it against him. And I think for the Knicks, just making it to the NBA Finals is enough. Knicks fans would disagree with me, but the fact that Jalen Brunson has brought you to the finals, that Karl Anthony Towns has played as well as he did in the postseason, Anunoby playing so well in the finals so far, the Knicks, even if they don't beat the Spurs, the fact that they made it, the fact that there's a NBA Finals game in Madison Square Garden for the first time in almost 30 years at this point, the Knicks just making it, I think, is a win in of itself for basketball and for the city of New York. But the Spurs, if they can come back and win it, and he can win that first title as early as he already has, because he's only 22 years old, he'll be 23 in January, um, this would set a precedent for the GOAT debate. But you're right. I mean, if he ends up losing this finals, then he can't be in that same conversation that Jordan would be in. They hold the finals records against LeBron. Kobe was 5-2 in the finals, so like ultimately this would affect his legacy come down the road.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because you can't say this is similar to LeBron in 2007 when he went up against the Spurs because LeBron didn't have as much help as Victor Wembanyama does on this team. I do think though the biggest issue for the Spurs and where they'll keep running into trouble is just the size of the New York Knicks wings with OG Anunoby and Josh Hart because they are going to continue to generate second chance points for their team where as long as you have someone boxing out Wemby and you're able to get him away from the rim, the Knicks are definitely going to still be getting second chance opportunities, especially if they're going to go really small with their 4 guard lineup. But it has worked out for them defensively. I mean, they've been double teaming Jalen Brunson and they're making him work. So I do think part of the strategy this series is double team Jalen Brunson, make him work as hard as possible, push him out to half court, and then anytime you get an opportunity to hit him or push him on the ground, do it. And they're kind of using the same strategy that the Cleveland Cavaliers used with Steph Curry in 2015 remember when it took him a couple games to really break out, where I don't necessarily think Jalen Brunson's going to rise above his current shooting percentage right now against the San Antonio Spurs. I do think this is kind of how it's going to be the rest of the series because I don't really think either of these teams are going to blow each other out. Like, this series has pretty much been even through 3 games.
I mean, just game 2 alone is a free throw away from it being a tie game and 2 free throws away from it being a totally different outcome at this point. I would say the Knicks took game 1 pretty handedly for the most part, the way that they handled the fourth quarter, but it was tied going into that fourth quarter. And then game 2, I mean, that was a final possession that Wemby kind of fumbled there. And then game 3, it was kind of just throughout the entire game, it's been neck and neck, just been exchanging baskets. So of all the finals that I've watched over the last 5 to 7 years, I would say this is definitely the closest through the first 3 games. So I'm excited to see how the next couple of games play out for them.
Yeah, and then for the rest of the series outlook, in games 1 and 2, the Spurs averaged 14 assists. In game 3, they had 28.
Okay.
Turnovers, they averaged 14 and a half. In game 3, they had 8.
Okay.
Wemby shot distance, games 1 through 2, was 16.2. His distance in game 3 was 10.6. He is also averaging 35 picks per game, where coming into this series, he was only averaging 23 picks per game as far as pick and
Okay.
rolls set.
Okay. So, I mean, I feel like just with the adjustments alone, Wemby also admitted in game 1 that the Spurs might have celebrated their win against the Thunder a little too hard prior to this series because they had a later turnaround. Obviously, the Knicks were well rested in game 1. They were coming in with the momentum, especially coming off of 2 consecutive sweeps, whereas the Spurs just went through tooth and nail to beat the Thunder. So I expected game 1 to go kind of as it did, but game 2 kind of slipped away from the Spurs there. Um, I think now that they have a couple extra days to rest, come game 4, the Spurs will be ready to tie the series and then be the best of 3 series moving forward.
And then for some individual and team milestones that have happened so far in the NBA Finals, because we are history buffs and we're seeing history be created in real time right now. Victor Wembanyama became the second youngest player ever behind Magic Johnson. Seems like a reoccurring theme to record at least 35-5 in his in a finals game.
Huge. In the GOAT conversation, Magic Johnson.
And then Wembanyama and Stephon Castle became the first pair of teammates aged 22 or younger to each score 20 points in a finals game. The Spurs are currently the second youngest team to ever reach the finals. Yeah, and this was in the first home game in Madison Square Garden hosted since 1999 that they did this.
Yeah.
And I said this.
And that
Go ahead.
and the wild part about that entire game was obviously with the president going to that game, just the security around that, the city of New York essentially in lockdown at one point, like the ramifications behind it, the first sitting presidents to attend an NBA Finals game, all of that, politics aside, I feel like that was what I think there was more pressure on the Knicks just for that alone. And you saw that when the Knicks came out flat a little bit in the first quarter of that game. They came back in the second quarter, but I think also with those ramifications around it, with all the pressure on the Knicks, that the Spurs took advantage there.
Yeah, they definitely took advantage of it. And I said this coming into the series where why I thought the Spurs had a chance and why I thought they could win the series was Madison Square Garden is not the home court advantage that people make it out to be. Well, it is a iconic stadium and it's a great place to play. Typically, Madison Square Garden is known for the opposing team or opposing players coming in there and having historic performances. Most of you remember Steph Curry's breakout game where he became super mainstream was in Madison Square Garden, where he dropped 54 points. And yeah, it's compared to Oklahoma City, like they're both really loud stadiums, but New York, it is a whole spectacle where I do think for a young team like the San Antonio Spurs that has as much confidence and thinks they are as good as they who are not scared of the moment, the fact that they rose to the opportunity when they were in Madison Square Garden, like it definitely seems like it is a good home court advantage, but it can also backfire on you if you're the team that has to play there, because there's really nothing like it in the NBA where you're playing in the heart of New York. It's in middle Manhattan, so it's in mid downtown, so you're right there. So I do think like that will also motivate players like the Spurs, especially looking over and seeing all the celebrities in the front row too.
Yeah, so many celebrities were there. What is really cool about this finals for me is New York. We've kind of forgotten how much of a basketball city New York really is, but at the root of it, that is definitely a basketball city. Obviously, they love their Yankees there. Obviously, there's other sports. They're a sports crazed city, but it is cool as somebody who obviously is not a huge New York fan in general, just for my origins and your origins. But when New York is alive, especially with the Knicks being good, how much that city has just been resurrected from that. and seeing the Knicks be good, just seeing how much basketball has taken over for them, that is kind of the cool part about watching this finals as a kind of a partisan, not really caring of who wins this finals, just seeing how much New York has just come alive as a basketball city again, which we haven't really seen that in our lifetime, but that's kind of what New York has always been.
Yeah, and it's the first time in our lifetime since the Carmelo Anthony era that they've been competitive, and even when Carmelo was there, they only got to the second round. They never got to the conference finals. So the fact that they have been able to take this team to the finals, I definitely think is a success on its own. And game 2 reflected that, where game 2 was the most watched NBA finals game since 2019, surpassing last year's game 7.
Oh, wow. And that was game 2, you said?
Yeah, game 2 had the record for most watched finals game since 2019.
That's insane. But yeah, I'm excited to see. Any other stats as far as the finals?
Yeah, so for the finals, that pretty much covers it. Outside of there is one Josh Hart stat. Josh Hart recorded 15 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 steals in Game 3, becoming only the second player in finals history to hit those benchmarks since Larry Bird in 1986.
So Josh Hart's getting Larry Bird stats in the finals?
Josh Hart
is what you're telling me?
Larry Bird stats in the finals, yeah.
I've never seen Josh Hart and Larry Bird in the same room. Just let that be known.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. And then, did you see the Knicks fans' reaction? Speaking of New York coming alive, did you see their reaction after the finals with what was happening?
I don't think so.
I have some clips here. So the Knicks are a very enthusiastic fan base, and they were straight up attacking. So you have this guy just walking down the street here.
They're just
sees a bunch of Knicks fans just running.
And they're just...
They jump him. This is after. You literally had people hiding behind police barricades from Knicks fans. And this is the good part of the New York Knicks being good, and then you also have the bad part. And a lot of Knicks fans are trying to say, oh, no, these aren't real Knicks fans. We don't claim them. But they look like Knicks fans to me. They look like they're in New York. And if the standard is they got there after 1990, yeah, maybe. But they're still Knicks fans. And then this guy ends up walking away bleeding. Like, he gets jumped and surrounded. There's like 21 videos. And this is literally just because he's wearing a Spurs jersey. They have him running down the street.
Jesus. That's disgusting.
So it's like, you think Philadelphia's bad? And there's a couple more clips like this. Yeah, this is the same guy that was just... They were getting chased. We saw him get pushed down in the video earlier. Now he's bleeding. That's great.
Disgusting.
Yeah. It's like, for, like, the Knicks, like, and then they're messing with this guy, grabbing him by the jersey.
That's just a little excessive.
A little bit, you think? And then
yeah.
This is a video of them standing behind the police.
Yeah, that's just a little ridiculous. That's the reason why I hate New York fans. It's not just about where I'm from. New York Yankees fans are the same. Poor guy.
This old guy is getting harassed in the street.
He never wears Spurs jersey again. No. Yeah, I mean that's just gross though. That's just heinous. This is why I don't root for New York teams historically. Because the Knicks, like, the team themselves is easy to root for. Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, we like those guys. OG Anunoby. But, like, just basically robbing people and harassing people in the streets because they're Spurs fans, like, come on. What are we doing?
I feel like this is who people think Celtics fans are, too. And even Philadelphia, because Philadelphia riots, but I don't think I've ever seen people getting jumped like this just for wearing an opposing team's jersey. Um, like outside of college sports, maybe, but this is just downtown New York after it was on lockdown, because you had the president go to a finals game for the first time, and now everyone's crashing out after they lose. So there's one part of you that says, "Oh, I'm glad the Knicks are finally good after 50 years," and there's a part where I hope they are the first team to win the first two games on the road, and then lose the finals because of shit like this. Like I want to see the Knicks go up 3-1 and then blow a 3-1 lead to the San Antonio Spurs. Especially after watching these videos, and New York fans will be like, "Oh, we don't claim them." Like, okay, is Howard Lutnick sitting in the front row someone else you claim who's a Knicks fan? Then someone who went to Epstein Island and engages in insider trading and fraud? Is that better for you?
Yeah, yeah, that's heinous. That's a bad taste. That's the worst kind of sports fandom right there. Is when you're robbing, when you're harassing people. That poor guy left with a bloody nose, lost his jersey as well, all because he's a Spurs fan. Like that's disgust. That's why New York fans are by far the worst of any sports city. Boston fans might have their own issues. Philly have their issues, but that alone is heinous. I'll take any other fan base over whatever the fuck that was.
Yeah, I mean, what's worse, someone yelling a slur at a player or someone getting stomped out because they're wearing an opposing team's jersey? I still have like some of these videos up, and people are literally grabbing chairs. You have full on riots breaking out. So imagine the Knicks lose the next four games and they lose game six at home. Like the riots that'll happen, and
People are gonna die.
you want to give these people free tickets, and you feel bad that they can't get into the game. Like, no, this is why they're not allowed in the stadium, and this is why it's $10,000 for a cheap ticket.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Yeah, fuck New York fans, frankly. But NBA Finals is in full effect. We'll see how these next games play out here. But this is a football show first. We'll be covering the NFC East in just a few minutes, but we do have some NFL news as well. You have some of the MVP odds as well. And then we have Brandon Ayuk updates as well. Um, but yeah, NFL is back almost just in a couple of months here.
Yeah, it's almost back. It's June, and I feel like June is going to fly by. Um, you have a trip. You're going back to the homeland this month, and then I have a 2 week trip. Gonna be Bigfoot hunting for 2 weeks in the Pacific Northwest. So I feel like it's gonna fly by, and then after that, it's gonna be mid July, and then August we're gonna have preseason. So the NFL season is a lot closer than most of you think, and if you are someone who places your hard-earned cash on odds, this is from Dan Parr, and he has the top 9 dark horse MVP candidates for next season, and we're going to go through, react to them, give our thoughts, and then maybe give our early sentiment on the MVP after we finish going through this article. So I am going to give you his ranking here and have you react to this. So at number 9, he has Bijan Robinson. Currently, his odds right now are at plus 1,000. And it's mostly just because the 49ers went 8-9. And then he led the team last season with 2,200 scrimmage yards. So I do think this could be an interesting player.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to be the focal point of that offense. The only reason why he's not going to win MVP is because clearly now it's just a quarterback position. But him, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, those are guys that are in contention as a running back to win MVP. And the way that their offense is currently set up with how young he is, I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities, especially in the receiving game. And then 2,200 scrimmage yards last year. If he can get 2,500, I think he'll be in the MVP conversation. And I think that he'll get there.
And part of the argument here that he makes too is he didn't even lead Atlanta in rushing touchdowns. That title went to Tyler Algier, who departed in free agency. So perhaps there may be more goal line opportunities in his first year in Kevin Stefanski's era. And I do think that is the key point: is Kevin Stefanski's era. Because no matter what you think of Kevin Stefanski as a head coach, when he has an elite running back, his offense kind of hums a little bit.
Yeah, Nick Chubb. I mean, how good was Nick Chubb in Cleveland? So I definitely think so. And Bijan, as much as I love Nick Chubb, Bijan Robinson is a better running back than Nick Chubb.
Yeah. My only problem with this, though, is he's a running back, and we have been arguing on the show for a non quarterback to win MVP for a long time, and it just feels like it's not going to happen. We had it happen one time with Adrian Peterson in 2012, but ever since then, it's just been quarterback, 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 quarterback every single time since, where I do think you had a legitimate argument for a non quarterback to win it last year, and you definitely had a argument for a non-quarterback to win it when Josh Allen did too.
Well, we had Cooper Cup's Triple Crown there. We've had Tyreek Hill had some pretty historic seasons there. And then Christian McCaffrey has had some pretty great seasons that are MVP worthy. In order to be an MVP for the running back position, though, you have to rush for 2,000 yards more often than not. And I feel like that's what he's going to have to do.
Yeah, so that is Bijan Robinson. Definitely think that one could be interesting. And at number 8, he has Kyler Murray, who's currently sitting at plus 4,000 odds. So as we saw Kevin O'Connell, what he did with a reclamation project 2 years ago when he flipped a career arc of Sam Darnold by helping him become a Pro Bowl QB and earn a few points in MVP voting in his lone season with Minnesota. Now I'm fascinated to see what the QB guru can do with Murray, who's looking for the O'Connell bump after cratering in Arizona. He still has to beat out 2024 first-round pick J.J. McCarthy for the starting job, but if Murray is able to tap back into the dual threat ability that earned him consecutive Pro Bowl trips a few years ago in 2020 and 2021, it shouldn't be much of a competition.
I see the vision. I don't think this is going to happen. I do think he's going to be a lot better. We do have to remember that Sam Darnold was an MVP candidate in that Minnesota run as well. Kyler Murray, with his dual threat ability, if he can tune back into 2021 Kyler, especially those first 7 games of 2021, I think he'll be in contention for it. If anything, though, I think he's more in the conversation for comeback player of the year, if anything. Kyler, I don't see him having better stats than Caleb Williams or Mahomes or Allen or Lamar, and it is somewhat of a stats sport. I also think it's also based on team success a lot more often than not, and I don't see the Vikings having better records than those other teams above. So it's a good idea. I mean, it's a good vision. I see why he has him there, but I just don't think Kyler is going to be so exceptional that he's going to have better stats and a better record than those other players mentioned.
Yeah, I think it's possible that he does, especially he's never had like weapons this good in his career. He had DeAndre Hopkins at the tail end of his prime, and he had Christian Kirk, but having someone like Justin Jefferson, who is arguably the best wide receiver in the league with Jordan Addison, and now you add Jawan Jennings to that. I do think this is going to be the best opportunity of his career, and if we see him late in the season take on Caleb Williams and outplay him, and the Vikings end up winning the division when Caleb Williams is also having an MVP-esque season, I could see it being a race between Stafford, Kyler, and Caleb Williams, but this is a big if, but if you put $10 on this, it is plus 4,000 odds, so wouldn't be a bad bet there.
Yeah, not at all.
At number 7 has Baker Mayfield. says it's easy to forget given how the Buccaneers face-planted in the second half of the season last year. But at midseason, Baker Mayfield was a leading MVP candidate. Tampa was thriving, dropping 38 points in an October win over future Super Bowl champion Seattle. Injuries in Mayfield was playing through a lot. According to now former Bucs legend Levante David, swallowed the team whole down the stretch. So essentially saying they should bounce back this year. Mike Evans out the door. Now Baker Mayfield, potentially if he's not dealing with injuries or banged up this year, he could lead the Bucs to a division win and win MVP when he was already the leading candidate midseason last year.
Yeah, my problem is I don't know if he can have a full season of how he played the first half of the season. I think he has proven in his time as a quarterback that he can be kind of streaky, where he'll have some really great games in a row, like what we saw the first probably 7 games of the season, and then injuries pile up. Maybe he starts to throw interceptions. He does tend to be at times kind of fumble happy and a little bit turnover prone from certain times. Has some games where he's not great, so I just don't know if he'll have the consistency to be MVP when a lot of the times these MVP races are determined week to week. If he starts to have a losing streak, that could affect his MVP race. If he's maybe 9-8 or 10-7, that's going to hurt him. So I don't think Baker will be MVP. I would refute this one. And plus, without Mike Evans too, I don't know if they'll have the receiver core that he had that helped him be as good as he was the first 7 games of the season.
Yeah, and Drake May didn't win the MVP because of strength of schedule or something last year. So doesn't that mean that Baker Mayfield won't win it because he's going to be in the worst division in football?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, Baker's loved, but at the same time, I also think there's a lot of pitchforks out for Baker more often than not. I feel like there's still a lot of reporters that maybe don't like him. So I don't think he'll get the votes to be MVP, but I can see the vision.
All right. That is Baker Mayfield at number 7. At number 6, we have Jalen Hurts. With A.J. Brown leaving after growing apart, it's a perfect opportunity for Jalen Hurts to take control of the team with new wide receivers Hollywood Brown, Dontavian Wicks, and first-round pick Mekhi Lemon arriving, and also second-round selection Eli Stowers, who gives the offense a freak athlete at tight end, and not knowing if we'll see peak Saquon Barkley again. He's still ranked top 10 in rushing yards with 1,140, but he's definitely taken a big step back versus the previous season. So I could definitely see the headlines with this one where Jalen Hurts loses A.J. Brown, their star wide receiver, and then he pulls it together with this new group. So if he is able to do that, I could definitely see him finally being in that MVP conversation. My thing is, it seems like the media don't really like him, where even though he's been in 2 Super Bowls and had essentially 2 perfect games in the Super Bowl, he still is trashed by the media, and they act like he's been the biggest problem in Philadelphia when the only thing he did wrong was get to 2 Super Bowls in 4 years. I don't know. I feel like he deserves a break and maybe a chance to enter in the MVP conversation.
I mean, he was in the MVP conversation the first Super Bowl run, and I think you're right. I think it's the media part for him. The city of Philly doesn't seem to fully embrace him. The media, what they're going to use is he's got this perfect roster because the defense is still pretty well constructed, and offensively, he'll still have Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley. Just like they use strength of schedule against Drake May, I think they would use his roster against him. And then also, if you're not a fan, if the media is not a fan of you, they're not going to vote for you for MVP. So, unfortunately, I feel like that's why he won't get it. But I think he could be an MVP candidate for sure.
Yeah, and his odds are at plus 2,800. So, yeah, if Eli Stowers is a really good tight end for them and Mekhi Lemon hits, having Hollywood Brown and Dontavian Wicks, I do think is better than their 1, 2, 3, and 4th option at wide receiver. So I do think they have more depth on offense, and people always kind of like to write off Philadelphia, but I mean, they've lost twice in the playoffs after getting to the Super Bowl. So not every team is going to get to the Super Bowl every year, but if they get there every other year or every 2 or 3 years, still a major accomplishment. I don't know. Nick Sirianni still has the highest winning percentage of any coach in NFL history. Just gonna put that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. They could be back. I agree. Especially if Saquon rebounds. I'm on board.
And then at number 5, moving on from Jalen Hurts, we have Sam Darnold. He has plus 2,800 odds, and Darnold is going to turn into a pumpkin narrative, was on life support heading into last season's playoffs, and it turned out it died for good when he hoisted the Lombardi Trophy the night of February 8th. The former draft bust has now earned Pro Bowl nods in consecutive seasons while leading his teams to a record of 31-7 in that span, including playoffs. He has a touchdown to interception ratio of 5-0 in Seattle's title run, with a fumble lost in the playoffs. All that's left for him to prove is that he's an MVP, more than the beneficiary of Jackson Smith and Jigsa's real ability, a dominant defense, and a potent running game, even though Kenneth Walker is not back. And then he has Zach Charbonnet coming off an ACL injury. So if Kenneth Walker leads and Sam Darnold still has a really good season, puts up good stats with Jackson Smith and Jigba, they come back and they're the number 1 seed. I think the case for Sam Darnold, where he's not going to have the best numbers, but Seattle would have to be the 1 seed again. And it would have to be very pass heavy, where, look, Kenneth Walker is gone. He's the Super Bowl MVP. But Sam Darnold's still putting up really good numbers. He had like 38 touchdowns to, I don't know, like 7 or 8 interceptions.
Yeah. I don't think Sam Darnold wins MVP next year. However, the narrative has definitely turned on Sam Darnold in the sense they once framed him as this draft bust that he definitely was. But these last 2 seasons, he's solidified that he's overcome those odds. He's become a Pro Bowl quarterback. And I do think the media wants to give him an MVP if he's able to be one. Last year, he had 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, 14 picks. The year before in Minnesota, he had 35-12, and he was someone in the MVP conversation. So now that narrative's behind him, if he can have a season where he has, say, 35 touchdowns, 4,500 yards, and maybe 10 picks, and they are the number 1 seed again, despite some of the people they lost in free agency, then I think he deserves to be in the conversation.
Yeah. And I think he will be at least hovering around the conversation, but I think unfortunately, because he is Sam Darnold, he won't be taken seriously, even if they end up being the number 1 seed. And I just don't think he's going to have the best numbers. I think he would have to have the most touchdowns by a quarterback, or the most passing yards, or it would have to be something like turnover ratio there for him to win it. But I just don't think the media is going to be clamoring to give Sam Darnold an MVP, because in their mind, it's not that interesting, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then at number 4, we have Jane Daniels. His odds are at plus 2,000. He says, after an injury-plagued season in 2025, everyone's waiting to see how he will get off the mat. Washington's running a new offensive coordinator by 30-year-old former QB David Blau is their offensive coordinator. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
And then he said he will ask Jane Daniels to take more snaps under center. I won't blame the third-year passer if the burden feels too heavy, after the Commanders were very aggressive in support of him last season, trading for Laramie Tunsil and Deebo Samuel. This year's moves were far less splashy at the moment. Third-round pick Antonio Williams is the most notable addition to the receiving core, which is badly in need of more juice, opposite of Terry McLaurin. They do start, though, with Philadelphia, at Dallas, and then Seattle, which could derail his season before it even starts. So yeah, Jaden Daniels, I do think like he has an outside shot, but if Joe Burrow hasn't really had a season put together where he's going to be MVP, I don't necessarily think Jaden Daniels will, especially with how he struggled with injuries last season. Definitely worried me, because it seemed like every single game he was taken out last year that I watched for the Commanders.
Yeah, I also look at their roster. We're going to cover them later. Not overly impressed with their receiver core. They might be in on Brandon Ayuk, who we'll cover later as well. But I just don't think he has the team around him that could propel him to that MVP. Jaden Daniels is super talented, but he's also been hurt the last 2 seasons. He had injuries in college as well. And the way that he plays, he's in a position where he is more likely to get hurt. And they also are in a division with a Giants defense that's really good, a Cowboys defense that's more improved now, and then the Eagles defense, which has been a top tier defense the last few years as well. So just in your division alone, you have a tough schedule there. I don't know if he'll be able to overcome what the Commanders have built for him. So unfortunately for that, I don't see him as an MVP candidate.
Yeah, I think Philly, the Giants, and Dallas, to be honest, are all better than Washington. So, yeah, I think it's going to be tough when you're probably going to be the worst team in your division, unfortunately. Um, and then after Jaden Daniels at number 4, we have Jared Goff, who is plus 3,500. He said Jared Goff is the only quarterback to rank top 5 in EPA in each of the last 4 seasons. He finished 5th in MVP voting in 2024 and has made the Pro Bowl in 3 of the last 4 seasons. His game isn't built on sizzling highlights, but he's in a rare category when it comes to consistently providing top-tier production. His MVP campaign will go as the Lions go, and he has a very manageable schedule, like Detroit's chances to bounce back. Nothing will be more critical in determining Jared Goff and the Lions' success than the play of their new offensive line, with Penei Sewell flipping from right tackle to left tackle, center Cade Mays being signed in free agency, and then first-round pick Blake Miller will likely replace Sewell. Versus pressure, Jared Goff is 51% completion, 7 yards attempt, 24 interceptions, and 22 touchdowns with a 72 quarterback rating. But versus no pressure, he is 75% completion, 8 yards, and 106 touchdowns to 17 interceptions with a QB rating of 117. So if this newly revamped offensive line for the Lions does pan out, could you see Jared Goff being a dark horse MVP candidate, or do you think he's just someone the media won't take seriously, even if the Lions do bounce back and win the division?
I think he can, for the simple fact that you said he was 5th in the MVP in 2024. If he can build upon that season and be even better, then I do think that the media does love Detroit nowadays. At least America does. So if Jared Goff can have 40 touchdowns, 4,800 yards, complete 70% of his passes, kind of similar to what he did in 2024, I do think that more people embrace the Lions than what they did back then. If he can bring them back to another 14-3 or 15-2 type season, then maybe then. I do think Jared Goff, unfortunately, does have that same issue that Sam Darnold has, where people don't necessarily take him seriously as a legitimate MVP candidate. So for that, I don't see it happening. But could he be in the conversation? For sure.
Yeah, I think he'd be in the conversation, but he'd probably be lurking around that 4 or 5 spot perpetually, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then at number 2, he has Trevor Lawrence, and I'm just going to say no.
I'm going to say no, too. Trevor Lawrence is not the guy. Enough. I don't want to. And he has a new haircut that sucks, so no.
Yeah, it's like he added Chris Rodriguez, who had a career high of 500 yards rushing, and second-round tight end Nate Bauerkircher, who made 35 catches in his first 5 college seasons. Is that true?
Is that impressive? Is that supposed to be impressive to me? 35 catches is nothing.
Yeah. And they'll have Brian Thomas Jr., like, hopefully he's less injured, and Travis Hunter back, but I just don't. Yeah, we previewed the Jag season. We had them going 9-8 or 8-9, somewhere around there. I don't think the Jaguars are going to be able to just brush off losing Travis Etienne, who's pretty much their entire offense last year. And I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to stop being Trevor Lawrence. So that is also a big problem for the Jaguars.
And I'm sorry, you're hyping up the Jaguars by saying that they signed Chris Rodriguez, the backup to Bishal Tutin, and then Nate Perkresher. I know this is probably not the best take, but the name test does not pass for Nate Perkresher. That does not sound like a stud tight end. So you're flexing a tight end that doesn't pass the name test, and Chris Rodriguez, who was the third-string running back for the Commanders. That doesn't work for me. So that, yeah, I'm going to dismiss Trevor. Trevor Lawrence will not be in the MVP conversation.
And then at number 1, he has Brock Purdy. They added Christian Kirk this year. And then they also drafted Deshaun Stribling, who has size and speed, to make those who believe he was drafted too early at 33 eat their words. And then if 2024 first-round pick Ricky Pearsall breaks out, Kyle Shanahan could have a pretty solid wide receiver room here. And then George Kittle will be back. And then Jake Tonjes also performed well last year. And they also traded for Mike Evans, too.
They signed him, yeah.
Yeah, so they have Mike Evans now. So I actually like Brock Purdy a lot in this sleeper spot here.
Yeah, I think this one makes a lot of sense. Their offense should be humming. He has been Mr. Consistent for them. Every year he's had, roughly about 4,000 yards, 70% completion rating, QBR in the hundreds. And I don't see that changing this year. I know last year he got banged up a little bit, but if he's fully healthy, if he's throwing 4,500 yards, 30-plus touchdowns, and the 49ers are really good, I think that Brock Purdy could definitely get some MVP votes.
Yeah, I definitely like that one a lot. Brock Purdy should be up there. You have Mike Evans. If your pick at wide receiver at 33 pans out, and Pearsall stays consistent, Jake Tonjes continues to grow, you still have Christian McCaffrey playing well enough, even though he's not in his prime anymore. I definitely think if the Rams with all that firepower somehow lose and don't win that division, we could see Brock Purdy with the MVP because, the Rams were supposed to be the favorite for the Super Bowl. They made the huge trade for Myles Garrett, Trent McDuffie, and then the 49ers still ended up 13-4 on top of the division with Brock Purdy having a really good season. So I do think that would be his argument if he was to win MVP, and we're already starting to see some cracks in the armor for the Rams with their left tackle being arrested recently for suspicion of domestic violence. So start to see little things like that. Puka Nacua has also been going a little bit crazy. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with him. Don't want to weigh in on that, but yeah, he had to go to rehab already. And then it'll be interesting, but I do think that would be Brock Purdy's path.
Plus, also the Niners, no matter what happens to them, they could be hit by a nuclear bomb, and they're going to be 12-5 at this point. And maybe they've already been hit with a nuclear bomb near their training facility. I don't know, but no matter what happens, the Niners are an inevitable, at minimum, 11-win team. And with Brock Purdy, if he elevates his game even more than it already has, then we could be talking an MVP candidate, especially. Like you mentioned, the Rams are favorites. The Seahawks are coming off of a Super Bowl. You still have Dallas and Philadelphia that'll be down your necks for the 1 seed as well. So I definitely see it. In a contested NFC, if they're the best team, then yeah, I think Brock Purdy could definitely get votes.
Yeah, and it's a good segue because they're doing all of this in spite of paying Brandon Ayuk. And Brandon Ayuk says the 49ers ain't smart because they dome.
Yeah, he went on live a couple of days ago and sent some more harsh comments to the 49ers. I want to know eventually when this book comes out about what exactly happened with the Niners and Brandon Ayuk, because I remember a beautiful marriage. He wanted a contract. They gave him his contract. He had 2,000-yard seasons. They made a Super Bowl. All was well. And then eventually he just disappeared. We haven't seen this man since 2024. And he went on live on Tuesday to say it was a 30-second video where he calls the Niners dumb and stupid. Exact quotes, y'all want to know why they really mad, though? They mad because they stupid, they dumb. Poetic.
Poetic.
They mad that they paid me $50 million in 8 months and then voided my guarantees for 2027. And I'm about to be on my new team. They mad at themselves for real. Ninjas acting like they mad at me, but they stupid ass mad themselves. Shakespeare.
Shakespeare. Sounds like J. Cole, greatest rapper of all time, according to some people.
Yeah. And it's unclear if he misspoke when discussing playing for a new team. What are they talking about? Hold on. This article reads, they mad at themselves. They stupid ass mad at themselves. Unclear if they're speaking of a new team. It later mentions that his preferred destination is to join the Commanders with Jaden Daniels, as they had shared time together at the great College of ASU. Um, but, I mean, Shakespeare, my favorite line in this is, they mad because they stupid, they dumb. Just in case you didn't know they were stupid, they're also dumb. Just
Yeah.
putting it out there. So, I mean, this should be something studied in poetry, something studied in the beauty of linguistics. But yeah, Brandon Ayuk, not happy with the Niners.
Yeah, and at this point, the 49ers have to start investigating if it was Brandon Ayuk who shot Ricky Pearsall when he got to San Francisco.
I mean, we don't know who the shooter is. That's a very real thing. Brian Robinson, also, another guy that's in San Francisco. He also was shot, if you didn't know that. Brandon Ayuk could be attached to a lot of these things. We don't know.
Oh, allegedly. We don't know if he is attached, but it sounds like he could be. And the fact that he wants to go to Washington, like, okay, you want to go to FedEx Field where you have sewage leaking into the locker room, literally the worst amenities, and then you're going to go to California from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. Like, okay, have fun with that. If that's what you really want, just because you played with Jaden Daniels at one point. And I don't. Do you think Brandon Ayuk is going to come back and be good? Because it sounds like he's going to come back and play terrible. Like this just. I don't think like Le'Veon Bell went crazy or anything, but when he held out for a year, started rapping, and then came back with the Jets with the new contract, he really was never the same. And when we see players just hold out like this, I don't think he's necessarily just going to come back and be really good all of a sudden. I think he's going to come back, sign with the Commanders, and then perpetually bounce out of the league.
I would agree. I mean, Le'Veon Bell was the best running back in football at one point. He sits out a year, signs with an inferior franchise, and is never the same. He's washed by 2 or 3 years. Brandon Ayuk has always been a good wide receiver, but he also was paired alongside Deebo Samuel, who was a stud in San Francisco. Yes, he had 2,000-yard seasons back to back, but those were 2022 and 2023. We're talking about 3 years removed from that. Also, on top of that, he's coming back from an ACL tear, which some players never fully recover from. And the part of the beef that he has with the Niners is that he wasn't doing the rehab facilities for his MCL with the 49ers. I'm sure he's back to full strength now, but he had been not participating in his rehab sessions. He's that much older. Now Brandon Ayuk is 28 at this point, which is not a favorable age the older you get as a wide receiver. And like you mentioned, he's talking about how they dumb, they stupid, but you're going from San Francisco, one of the best cities in the country, to Washington, D.C. You go from Levi Stadium to FedEx Field. You're going from the beautiful weather of California. Yes, it's tax effective. Yes, there's a lot of homeless people. But then you're going to D.C. where there's probably just as many homeless people, but the weather sucks and everybody hates D.C. Who's the one that's stupid, they dumb? I want to know which one you're referencing. Because later in this live stream, he also calls them little-ass boys and dogs. So, very choice words. And female dogs also. He calls them female dogs, which I'm assuming refers to the word bitch, but I'm not sure. Not specified here.
That's a wild like AI translation where if it doesn't want to cuss, it just gives you the meaning of the word. He's like said Kyle Shanahan is a female dog. It's like, you mean he's a bitch? Like what?
It also implies that the team is scared to release him because it's afraid that Ayuk could come back to haunt it if he lands elsewhere. I mean, how is this hurting the Niners? As far as I'm concerned, what happened to the Niners last year? The Niners went, 12-5 with their entire team being disintegrated, their offensive line gone, their defensive line gone, and yet they still won a playoff game without you? And they just replaced you with Mike Evans, who's a better all-time receiver than you? Like, I don't know which one is a female dog here, but it's definitely not the Niners. The Niners aren't losing anything with Brandon Ayuk being gone. Like, what are they losing? Who are they losing? They don't have a receiver. You know how many catches he caught last year? As much as you and I did. Like, losing Brandon Ayuk does not change the Niners at all. So what is going to happen? And then if he joins with the Commanders, is that going to change the Commanders overnight? No. Brandon Ayuk hasn't played in 2 years at this point. So no, he's going to go to the Commanders. He's going to suck. He's going to get cut, and then he's going to be signed by someone like the Jets, and then he's never going to be talked about again.
Yeah, he's gonna go to the Jets with Anthony Richardson.
Oof. Yeah, and then build the worst team in NFL history.
Yeah. I feel like Dan Quinn's going to see that quote, "They stupid, they dumb," and you know what? I think that's our guy to pair alongside Terry McLaurin. And then is this David Blau's first coaching job?
I think so.
Yeah, because remember, he was the one. Is he the one that he came in and played, and then he has like his girlfriend or wife is in the Olympics?
Yes.
Yeah, Melissa Gonzalez. Yeah, she's a hurdler.
He was an assistant quarterback coach prior. Yeah. He was the one that was in the Lions Hard Knocks.
Yeah, okay, I remember him. They had to cut him, and then they brought him back.
But now he's the OC for the Commanders, which I don't know if I love that personally.
Yeah, which is a good segue because today we are here to talk about the NFC East. We're going to be picking every single game for each team, and we might as well start with the Commanders because they are one of the most controversial teams where I don't think anyone really knows where to put them because you come off a season where you overachieve and then you have really high expectations last year and you underachieve, and now we're just in that weird period where we don't know exactly where the Commanders are going to go. Still feels like they are an older team. Dan Quinn, after year one, is he going to keep falling into a coaching slump? You fired Cliff Kingsbury, so now we're on offensive coordinator 2 with Dan Quinn, so feels as if this team is on thin ice here. And then as far as the Commanders for key additions and losses, they added Sonny Styles at linebacker, who is a generational playmaking talent, and they selected him over Caleb Downs to serve as a Micah Parsons-like centerpiece for Dan Quinn's new team. And then key losses, the departure of Deebo Samuel and Bobby Wagner leaves significant leadership and production voids on both sides of the ball, placing a heavy burden on Jaden Daniels here.
Yeah, I look at this Commanders team, this defense. I do like the addition of Sonny Styles. I think that'll help their defense overall. But this is a much older team on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they did go out and get Rachaad White and Jerome Ford to help that running game, but it's still not an overly impressive running game to me. The wide receiver core, even if Mr. Brandon Ayuk, Mr. Stupid and Dumb, comes and joins their team, I don't think it's going to change their outlook too much because Terry McLaurin, yes, he's a number 1, but he's probably better as a number 2. Luke McCaffrey hasn't proven to be a number 2 receiver quite yet. Last year he had 11 catches. In the year prior he had 18. He hasn't really had a lot of opportunities, so I'm not super sold on him quite yet. I haven't seen enough from him, frankly. And then Jaden Daniels. He was hurt last year. He's had injury issues in college as well. So I just don't trust it, especially because they have one of the worst facilities as well. So my outlook on this Commanders team, all the other teams in this division look better poised, whereas the Commanders, yes, they look like they could come back from 2024, but I just don't see it, and I do think this is the worst team in the division.
Yeah, and you have the worst facility in football. You have the worst stadium by player votes. No one likes playing there. You have sewage that leaks into the locker room, and your mascot and whole vibe of this team is stupid. No one likes the Commanders. No one likes Commander Tutty, the peg there. So it'll be a interesting season for Washington, and their season starts at 4:25 on September 13th in Philadelphia.
You know, I can say with the Commanders, They historically split with the Eagles. At Philadelphia, game one, off of their rails. I will take them beating the Eagles to start out the year.
Okay. Good win there to start game one. And then they go to Dallas to take on the new look Cowboys with that revamped defense. Dan Quinn.
He struggled there. I do think that they'll probably split with the Eagles and Cowboys, but I don't think it's going to be in week 2. I will take the Cowboys beating them to start their series against the Cowboys.
All right. And they have their first 1 o'clock game of the season, and this is their first home game as well, and is versus the defending Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, Super Bowl, defending champions early in the season. The Seattle Seahawks, I think, are much better poised to win this game. I will take the Seahawks to beat the Commanders.
All right. So you are 1-2 now. Good news, though. You get to go to London to face the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, in London, I do think Commanders should have the advantage. I'll take Jaden Daniels and that Commanders team in London. So yeah, I'll take them. I think they beat the Colts here, and I think when I did the Colts preview, I had the Commanders winning, so I'll rock with that.
All right. And this next week, they are going to be facing off against the New York Giants at home at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, and I don't see them beating the Giants here, especially if there's a full fill of health for Jackson Dart. I think he'll be better for them, so I will take the Giants winning this game.
All right. So Giants win that game. They drop to 2-3, and then they go to San Francisco. Looks like on Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football. Brock Purdy, potential dark horse candidate, according to a previous anchor that we discussed with. They have to go across the country, one of the furthest trips of the year for anybody. So I will take the Niners to beat them on Monday Night Football.
All right, so it is 2-4, and fans are starting to panic. Why am I not a Ravens fan? People are asking that question in the greater Virginia, D.C. metro areas. And then after the loss on Monday Night Football, they have a bye, thankfully, 2-4. And then they host Philadelphia, and you had them splitting with Philly. Do you still feel that way? This is on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, they beat them first off, and then Sunday Night Football, I do think the Eagles get the win. Whether or not they beat them in week 1 or in week 8, I do think they split. So I will take the Eagles beating them this time.
And this gauntlet of a schedule continues. Yeah, it looks like they play the NFC West next year because they host the Rams the next week.
Yeah, and I'm not taking them beating the Rams either. I will take them falling to the Rams. Surely their schedule must get easier eventually, but this is a gauntlet. You go New York. Well, first, no, honestly, it starts in week 1 because you still, even when you face the Colts, you have to go to London, which isn't easy. And then you have your Giants, Niners, Eagles, Rams all in a row. That's brutal.
So, and it doesn't get easier, actually, because the very next week you play the Giants on Thursday Night Football, and you're 2-6 at this point.
Yeah, and I think I had the Giants beating them the first time. Do I have them getting swept by the Giants? I do. I have them beating. I think the Giants sweep them. So I will take them losing to the Giants.
And then the very next week on Sunday Night Football, they play the Cincinnati Bengals in November. Usually Joe Burrow's, pretty good then.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bengals there. Man, this schedule's rough for them. They have 2 wins now at this point?
Yeah, they're 2-8 now, and their schedule finally eases up. And they go to Washington potentially with Jacoby Brissett making over $100 million.
Yeah, they have to beat the Cardinals. It can't be that bad of a season. So, yeah, I'm going to take them beating the Cardinals.
And then they go to Tennessee.
I think they beat the Titans. They should get some more wins in there. I'll take them getting some momentum there.
All right. Then after Tennessee, they host Houston at home. So cold weather game for C.J. Stroud. He struggled a little bit, but also the Texans' defense is, I don't know, pretty good, especially after
That's a
adding
tough,
Hayden McDonald.
yeah, tough defensive game. In the cold, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They've won 2 back-to-back games. Give me the win against the Texans.
All right, so Dan Quinn is trying to save his job actively. But then they play the Falcons after the Falcons have potentially been eliminated from playoff contention, which is when they play their best football.
Yes, but it is also in December in DC. If we're going to use it against CJ Stroud, I'm going to definitely use it against Tua. So it's not so fast. The Commanders have won 4 straight.
All right, and the Commanders are now 6-9. Everybody laughs. Everyone thinks it's funny, and they go to Minnesota to face off against Kyler and the Vikings. Or JJ.
MVP Kyler Murray potential dark horse candidate. I think the Vikings are playing for a lot more at this point. I think they'll be competitive. I think the Vikings break their winning streak there and lose their funny 6-9 record.
All right, so now they are 6-10. Good news though, they get to go to Trevor Banks Stadium.
Trevor Banks Stadium. Man, I mean, does it matter at this point? They're 6-10. Their season's over. I'll take them. I'll take them losing to the Jaguars because I think the Jags could be in contention for that division, playing harder. Jags tend to get hot at the end of the season as well, so I'll take the Jags to beat them.
All right, and then so you have the Jags winning that game there, so they're 6-10, and then that takes them into a matchup against the Cowboys in the last game of the season.
Cowboys could be playing for a lot more. I thought the Cowboys and them would split, but with Week 18 being a potential deciding factor for either of these teams, I will take the Cowboys beating them and then them falling to 6-11.
All right, so I think that's fair for the Commanders. You're in a really tough division this year. I do think the Giants are going to be fantastic on defense. It is going to all rely on the health of Jackson Dart, though, and Malik Neighbors' knee. How good is he going to be back? People just assume he's going to come back, immediately be the same player, but we could see him come back and be closer to what we saw from Brian Thomas Jr. last season, who had an excellent rookie year, dealt with some injuries, came back, never really looked like himself. So outside of that, their wide receiver room is also pretty thin on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as the New York Giants, so we have the Commanders going 6-11. The Giants, some of the main additions there, they went out and let's see what we have here. So they went out and got Darnell Mooney to bolster up that receiver core. Odell, Juju Smith-Schuster did some bolstering to their offensive line, and then made some splashes in the draft, getting Arvell Reese with that top pick. So Giants look poised to have a pretty tough defense coming into next year, especially with Brian Burns there, Kayvon Thibodeau, and a couple other studs there. But just kind of looking on the Giants on the outside looking in, John Harbaugh is the new head coach there. How do we feel about the Giants just as I pull up their schedule here?
Yeah, I think the Giants made some huge additions, especially getting potentially the best player in the draft in Averill Reese at number 5, and then they traded for the 10th overall pick and got Francis Mauigoa at offensive tackle. So that's definitely going to help your offense. So I think their offense isn't going to go through as many valleys as it has gone through, where there were a lot of ups and downs with the Giants over the past 3 years, whether it was with Brian Daboll or Daniel Jones. I think Jackson Dart is going to give them some consistency. So as long as they stay healthy, I do think this team has a outside shot to be a dark horse candidate to win the division and potentially make a deep run in the playoffs with how good their defense is. I mean, when you add a player like with the capability of Averill Reese, who's potentially the best player in the draft, and put him alongside Brian Burns, this is a Super Bowl defense. I don't think the offense is, but we've seen mid-tier offenses get to and win a Super Bowl when you have a historic or the best defense in the league.
Yeah, and I think it could be that. So we start in week 1. They go and hoist Dallas to start the season on Sunday Night Football.
They host Dallas to start this season. I think new head coach Dallas really won't know what to expect from the Giants. I will take the Giants to win that opening game on Sunday Night Football.
All right. So they carry that momentum into week 2 with another primetime game, Monday Night Football in SoFi to take on the Rams.
Monday Night Football in SoFi to take on the Rams. The Rams can start out slow for the season, but I will give the Rams the benefit of the doubt here and have them beating the Giants.
All right, so they are now 1-1, but their schedule gets a little bit easier after 2 tough starts. They go and hoist the Tennessee Titans.
I think they beat the Titans. That is going to be a long day for Cam Ward. Prayers up for him.
Well, if you're making prayers for Cam Ward, I want you to make a prayer for Carson Beck or Jacoby Brissett because they then host the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, and I think they win that game as well here and move to 3-1. So solid start to the season for Harbaugh.
All right, and then week 5 they go to Washington, and I believe they swept the Commanders in our previous preview.
Yep, so you had them sweeping the Commanders. So for continuity, I will stick with that here. And now they are 4-1. Interesting.
All right, so not too bad. Pretty good start to their season. Once when they face the Rams, it looks like they got some easy ones in there. And then week 6, they host the New Orleans Saints.
They host the Saints. I think that'll be a tough battle, but I do think defensively they should be able to carry and win that game.
All right, so they are riding high. They are 5-1. First the Knicks, now the Giants. And then week 7, they go to Houston to take on the Texans. 2 tough defenses going head-to-head.
I will give the Texans the benefit of the doubt. I do think the Giants have more losses in here. Houston had played Baltimore pretty tough in the regular season when they faced off, so I do think the Texans win that one. They drop to 5-2. They're definitely due for a loss, but I do notice that the East plays the AFC South, which I do think is a strength for one of these teams potentially getting the number 1 seed.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. But they are now 5-2. They have a bye week, middle of the season, week 8, and then they go for to Philly to take on the Eagles in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think that's a battle. I think they split with Philadelphia. I will have them beating Philly the first time.
Okay, so they are now 6-2. And then Thursday Night Football, they go and face the Commanders.
And you had them sweeping the Commanders, so I will stick with that. They move to 7-2. Not bad.
All right. And then their schedule, they do have some tough games coming up, but week 11 they face the Jaguars at home.
They fit
in November.
At home in November. I think that's a tough game for Trevor, especially if it's going to be cold there. So yeah, give me the Giants in that one.
All right. And then they go to Indianapolis to take on the Colts.
Yeah, Daniel Jones. I think the defense might have a lot of pent-up animosity with all the seasons they played great, and Daniel Jones just took it, folded it up, and threw it in the trash. So I think there's going to be some pent-up animosity. Prayers up for Cam Ward. Prayers up for Carson Beck or Jacoby Brissett, and prayers up for Daniel Jones because I think the Giants set a sack record in that game.
All right. And now they're riding high. They've won 4 straight games, second 4-game winning streak of the season at this point. And then this is when it gets a little bit tougher there. Week 13, they face the Niners.
Face the Niners. They'll give the Niners the... Is this at home?
This is at home.
I will give the Niners the benefit of the doubt. I do think there should be more losses in here for the Giants. Probably some of it will be health related. So give me San Francisco in this one.
All right. And then week 14, they go to Seattle to take on the defending champs.
Yeah, I think they actually match up pretty well versus Seattle. I think they'll be able to force them in some mistakes. It's going to be a tough road environment, though. So at this point, I would lean Seattle because I think there are just more losses in here for the Giants. I don't think they're going to come out and be 14-3.
All right. So they are now back-to-back losses there. They host Cleveland in December.
Yeah, good bounce back game for them. Then they can jump back up to 10-4. Yeah, I don't see Cleveland winning too many games, even though, Shador Sanders is this generational can't miss talent.
Yeah, in the 5th round. And then week 16, Monday Night Football against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, they gave Detroit a lot of problems last year, and I do think that continues. So give me New York to win that game versus Detroit on Monday night.
All right. And then last 2 games of the season at Jerry World for week 17.
At Jerry World, and I had them beating Dallas in week 1. I do think Dallas wins this time.
All right. And then with Philly, they end the season on a flex game against the Eagles.
Yeah, and I think that's a really smart flex game. I think that will be for the division. And Philadelphia will win based off experience. And they end up finishing the season 11-6 with some good win streaks in there. But I think, between 9 to 11 wins is very fitting for a New York team. And I think that's exactly where they're going to be, in that between 9 and 11 win range. I think that's very fitting for New York.
Especially because they have those twin towers of Jackson Dart and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Or Jackson Dart and Cam Scadaboo is what I meant to say. So 11-6, 10-7, 9-8, whatever it may be. I do think this Giants team, with that defense alone, if Cam Scadaboo can bring back what he was earlier in the season last year, Odell can get some old flashbacks as well. This is going to be a fun team. I would agree. I think 10 wins is my projection, but I do like how this breaks down there.
Yeah, it's a pretty, easy schedule comparatively to the rest of the division. So people will say, oh, you think the Giants can win the division? That's a little bit far-fetched. But you have to understand they didn't win the division. They weren't a top 2 team in their division last year, and they're going to have some easier games like against Cleveland, against Arizona here. So I do think the Giants are in a solid position to potentially win the division. Will 11-6 be good enough? We'll see, because they'll have to beat Philadelphia to do that. I had them splitting with Philadelphia, and they went 11-6. And Philadelphia has had an interesting offseason this year. They lost A.J. Brown. He moved on, but they added a lot of other wide receivers here. Dontavian Wicks, Hollywood Brown, one of them. And then they also went out there and got Eli Stowers at pick 54. And he's viewed as a potential successor to Dallas Goedert, who is currently on a 1-year deal. Then they also got Mekhi Lemon in the 1st round, who is a polished slot receiver with elite ball skills. They did lose Jalen Phillips and Reed Blankenship in free agency, and they countered by trading 2 third-round picks for Jonathan Greenard to stabilize the edge. So couple losses on defense, revamped wide receiver room. Saquon is another year older. Do you think Philadelphia should be the favorite, and do you have confidence that they actually made the right pick in the 1st round with them having such a horrible history drafting wide receivers?
What gives me more hope is the fact that Devontae Smith was a hit for them, and he's now kind of facing that number 1 position potentially. Last year, they just didn't really utilize A.J. Brown all too much, and Devontae Smith had 1,000 yards. He was good for them. Makai Lemon coming out of USC. USC does tend to have a pretty good track record as far as wide receiver talent. So I feel pretty confident there. Saquon is now 29 and he'll be 30 by the end of the season. So that is kind of a concern. He did have a pretty amazing first year with Philadelphia. Last year, between their offensive line woes, between some inconsistency, they did have some struggles there. He went from 5.5 yards a carry to 4.1. So are we seeing the regression of Saquon? Kind of hope not. I do think they bounce back, retooled their offensive line. So I do think the Philadelphia should be the favorites in this division.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They won it last year, and they made it to a Super Bowl Sirianni's first year, and then they lose in the first round, make it to a Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, and then they lose to the San Francisco 49ers last year. So Philadelphia has shown that they do bounce back well here, and they start out against Washington in week 1 of the NFL season. I believe you had Washington winning in week 1, though.
Yeah, I think they end up splitting with Washington because they always seem to, no matter how bad the Commanders are. And in week 1, I think the Commanders take them by surprise.
All right. And then they have a very, I'm just going to say, bizarre first half of the season here. Their next game is in Tennessee against the Titans.
And they should win that game.
All right. So now they are 1-1, and then they go to Chicago the next week, and this is on Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football. I mean, this is a winnable game for them, but Caleb Williams on primetime, I think Caleb Williams should be one of the better players this year, taking that next leap. So I'm going to take Chicago to beat them here.
All right. And then after they go to Chicago, go back home to Philadelphia, face off against the Rams. And they've kind of been Stafford's house of horrors here. I feel like Philadelphia's had a good beat on the Rams the past few seasons.
I would agree. I feel like they've been pretty well contested. I think if they don't beat the Bears, then they'll beat the Rams or vice versa. But I think they start their season 2-2. So I think they beat the Rams here.
All right. Everyone panics. They're 2-2. And then they go to London to face the Jaguars.
Yeah, and the Jags at this point, I believe, have already been in London. So they already had their London magic earlier. When I did the Jags schedule, I believe I had the Eagles beating them. So I will keep that. I do think they can beat Jags in their home territory.
All right. And then they go back home. Damn, they're not giving any of these teams who go overseas a break. Usually you get a bye, but I'm seeing multiple games where teams go overseas. I wonder if that's them trying to prep teams for potentially an international team. It's like, don't you usually get a bye after you go international?
Nope. Well, yeah, they usually do, but I've seen a lot of schedules so far this year that they just don't care.
Yeah, and I guess they're trying to see like the metrics on that, but they host the Panthers nonetheless. After facing Jacksonville and London.
And I think they beat the Panthers there. I just don't trust Bryce Young. Defense should be able to overwhelm them, and then with what they can do offensively, I think they should be able to beat them.
All right. And then after that, they face Dallas on Monday Night Football.
All right. And I do think they end up splitting with Dallas. This game, I'm going to take them beating Dallas. I think they start a little bit hotter, so I will take them beating Dallas this time around.
All right, so on a little bit of a heater here, they have won 3 straight games after starting out 2-2, and then they face the Commanders in Washington.
And then with Commanders beating them in week 1, Eagles get revenge. They go out and beat them in week 8.
All right, so now they are 6-2. After everyone panicked when they're 2-2, start to calm down, get a winning streak together here, and then they go to New York to face the Giants.
And I believe you had them beating the Giants, beating them, but beating them in week 18. I think it's flipped in this case. I'm going to have them beating the Giants in week 9 and losing to them in week 18.
Okay, so that would put them at 6-3 here.
Yes, but I have it reversed, so I have them beating the Giants in week 9 and then losing in week 18. So I'm just
And
gonna flip the split.
okay, so that would be put them at 7-2, I believe here, and then they go to Pittsburgh in a battle of Pennsylvania to face the Steelers and Mike
Aaron
McCarthy.
Rodgers. Yeah, Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers, last hurrah, last dance, dare I say. They are on a heater. I think they should beat Pittsburgh here. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but I do think this will be a close game.
Okay. So now they are 8-2, and after the Steelers game, they go to Dallas to face the Cowboys. I think this is a Thanksgiving game, and you said you had them splitting. So do you want to have them at 8-3?
Yeah, I think the Cowboys beat them on Thanksgiving. And then maybe there's a bit of a pull from here, but losing that game against Dallas on Thanksgiving.
All right. So now they are 8-3 after winning 6 straight games, and then they go to Arizona to face the Cardinals.
And everybody should beat the Cardinals next year. So I definitely have them beating the Cardinals in Arizona, especially because there's a lot of Philly fans in Arizona as well. So best believe it'll be mostly an Eagles game. So pretty much a home game for them.
Yeah, that game's basically a bye, and then they get to host Indianapolis after.
Yeah, and I will definitely take them beating the Colts here.
All right, so they beat the Colts, and then they host Seattle. Tough finish for the Eagles here.
Tough finish. This is on a weird time too. This is at 3 o'clock. So for Seattle,
yeah.
This is on a Saturday game. This makes sense why it looks weird. I will take Seattle to beat them here. I do think Seattle, especially with that vaunted defense, Zach Charbonnet should be getting under his legs at this point. So give me the Seahawks to beat them here.
All right, and then so they are 10-4, and they host Houston in their last home game of the year.
And I will take them beating Houston. I do think this will be a tough battle, Thursday Night Football, but I will take them beating the Texans. I think they can contain C.J. Stroud, especially because this will be in Philadelphia.
Right, so now they are 11-4. They go to San Francisco, and we have a playoff rematch. New revamped 49ers, new revamped Philadelphia Eagles.
And dare I say, though, I think they lose to the 49ers, especially a team that typically gets hot at the end of the season and a team that, despite the odds, is always good. I will take the Niners to upset them, setting up a pretty historic finish for Week 18.
Yeah, and you had them splitting with the Giants, and that is a flex game, and that would put it for the division, and this wasn't done on purpose. And usually we do have one game at the end of the year or a couple games for the division, so I really like that matchup. And then they would be going up against the Giants, and we would have them both finishing 11-6 with the Giants winning the last one. So it'd come down to common opponents. So it's probably going to be some team. One of these teams is going to lose to like the Cardinals or play around with it there, or maybe the Giants are a little bit more hungry and they sweep the Commanders, and the Commanders split with Philadelphia, and that's the difference, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. When I saw the Eagles' schedule initially, a game that kind of scared me for them is potentially the Colts playing around with their food there. I don't think I'm worried about them against Arizona, but another team like the Panthers, especially coming off of international play, that could be tough for them. But all in all, I think 11-6 is pretty good for the Eagles. And on Christmas Eve, true. That could also be tough. Thursday night, short game, because they really only have 5 days between Seattle and Houston. 2 really tough defenses. Chances are they'll probably split those, but in general, I think 11-6 for the Eagles is fair. Maybe they're 12-5, but I think given their uncertainty with Mekhi Lemon, who is going to be their tight end? Is it going to be the Eli Stowers? Is he going to be the next Brock Bowers? We don't know, but I think overall, I think 11-6 is fair.
Yeah, I think honestly between Honestly, I think they're also in that 9 to 11 win range, to be honest, because I think 11-6 is the top, and you have a really tough schedule here where I could definitely see them losing to maybe a team like Pittsburgh. Like Pittsburgh did add a lot of talent. They have Michael Pittman and DK Metcalf now, legitimate wide receiver room, and then you just have the Giants twice a year who are tough, and then with the Cardinals, you never know when a team who's played really bad can just come up and play really well. Houston, Seattle, San Francisco, and the Giants to finish the season though is absolutely brutal.
Yeah, that is a gauntlet for them. So it will be tough, especially because they already have that tough division for them. So it'll be interesting to see, but they should still be contending for that division at the end of the day when it comes down to it. And that sets up our final team, none other than the Dallas Cowboys. When I say Dallas Cowboys 2026, what do you say?
I say this is a team who drafted two first round picks on defense and Caleb Downs, who's a alpha leader from Ohio State, expected to immediately take charge of the secondary under Christian Parker, and then also Malachi Lawrence, drafted to fill the void left by former start DeMarcus Lawrence there. So I think on defense we can now bend but not break, and you bring back Michael Pittman to this team. You have CeeDee Lamb, who we already know that he is possibly a top five wide receiver. You potentially have two top five wide receivers on this team. So I do think that this is the year where if Dallas is going to come out, surprise everyone, and potentially win a Super Bowl, I think this is probably Dak's best chance to win an MVP this year. If we're talking about dark horse MVP candidates, especially with being able to feed CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. And then defensively, I don't think they're going to get completely gashed this year. So when I think of Dallas Cowboys, I think of dark horse MVP year and dark horse Super Bowl team. Because on offense, if their defense can just be normal, there's no reason they can't outscore every team in the league.
Yeah, I would agree. I think their defense is a lot better. Um, Obviously, they don't have Michael Parsons anymore, but Rashawn Gary's there. Kenny Clark is there. They went out. They got Caleb Downs. Malik Hooker is still there. Deron Bland, Defensive Player of the Year, Deron Bland, dare I say. And Quinnen Williams there. So they have the talent that they didn't have last year. Last year, their defense was one of the worst. And then on top of that, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson coming back from injury, and Javonte Williams, who played really well last year. So I would agree with your sentiments there with Dallas. But they start their season at New York to take on the Giants.
Yeah, I
And you have
believe
the
I
Giants
had
beating them.
Yeah, I had the Giants beating them in week one. I just think the Giants will be amped for the season and ready to go.
All right. And then week 2, they host the Commanders.
They host the Commanders, and I do think they probably sweep the Commanders this year. So I will take them to beat the Commanders.
All right. And then, why does this have an asterisk here? Neutral location. Interesting. Okay. Sunday, 27th, week 3, they host the Baltimore Ravens, but not in Jerry World. I'm not sure where it's actually going to be.
Yeah, and I will take the Ravens to win that game. I think Lamar versus Dallas will be a spectacle, but I do think Baltimore should be able to pull it out in this one. We get a good game from Lamar.
All right. And then week 4, the Battle of Texas in Houston to take on the Texans.
Yeah, and Houston owns Dallas if we're talking about football post the 2000s. So I think Houston handedly beats the Cowboys in this one.
Okay, so we're looking at the 1-3 Dallas Cowboys potentially. The sky is falling. But Thursday night football, they take on Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Jerry World.
Yeah, and I do think they win that game and start to get back in the saddle, as they say in Dallas.
And then potential tie game available for us. Sunday night football in Green Bay to take on the Packers. We know what happened last year. Historic rivalry. Cowboys and Packers.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's in Green Bay, I actually give the benefit of the doubt to the Packers in this one. So I will have Green Bay winning this one. I think this is going to be the Tucker Kraft game.
Kraft game. You heard it here first. Make sure to start Tucker Kraft in week 6. Week 7, Monday Night Football against Jalen Hurts and the Eagles.
And you had them splitting with Philadelphia. They won on Thanksgiving, so Philly beats them here. They're 2-5.
All right. Tough start
Yikes.
for Dak Prescott here, but their schedule does take a break here. They get to go to a home game in the great state of Arizona to take on the Cardinals.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but if you watched our show last year or the previous few years, there is a weird historic anomaly with the Cardinals beating the Cowboys. Let me pull it up here, actually. Because last year I picked the Cardinals just because I said, I think Arizona has this historic, no matter how good they are, they always beat Dallas and something fluky happens. And I think that trend is going to happen again. If we can pull that up here, Arizona versus Dallas.
The Cardinals have beat them.
Okay, I think Brick froze here. But let me pull this up. Because the Cowboys have struggled versus the Cardinals. So I do think it's going to be another tough one with where they're at in this season. I'm not sure if they'll end up losing this game, but Cardinals versus Cowboys has not been good for Dallas recently because the Cardinals were really bad last year and they still beat them. And then the Cardinals have won 8 of their last 10 games versus Dallas. Last year they beat Dallas 27-17. September 24th, 2023. They beat them 28-18. And then they beat them in 2022, 25-22, and then 38-10. So yeah, they beat them 8 of their last 10 games. Last year we had Marvin Harrison recorded a career high versus the Dallas Cowboys. So that's where we're at. When they play Dallas, we have guys setting career highs. It's always great. And he had 7 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown. Quarterback Jacoby Brissett threw for 261 yards. And then Dallas, the Cowboys offense failed to score a touchdown until the 4th quarter. Dak Prescott was sacked 5 times and threw 1 interception, finished with a 77 passer rating. That's not great. And then Dallas struggled in the red zone, converting only 33% of their attempts and failing twice on 4th and goal. This is versus the Cardinals last year. So, yeah, definitely some fluky things happening there. Can dive a little bit deeper. Yeah, Kyler wasn't there. It was Jacoby Brissett. And I think, was that Jacoby Brissett's only win last year? Let's see. I think it might be. He didn't win that many games with them. Let's see here. Yeah. His win versus Dallas on November 3rd was Jacoby Brissett's only win as the starter for the Arizona Cardinals during the 2025 season. Despite individual success, including setting a new NFL regular season record with 47 completions in a single game, the team struggled to translate his productions into victories. So, yeah, Jacoby Brissett in 2025 finished the season with a 1-11 record after taking over for Kyler Murray. He finished with 3,366 passing yards, and then he had 23 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and then he had a 64% completion percentage. But Jacoby Brissett's only win last year was against the Dallas Cowboys. So, yeah, you're back.
We will not be silenced any longer.
Jacoby Brissett took down the stream. I was speaking too much knowledge about Jacoby Brissett. I pulled it up. Jacoby Brissett was 1-11 last year. His only game he won was versus the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cardinals have won 8 of their last 10 games, and Marvin Harrison set a career high 7 receptions for 96 yards versus Dallas. So that is what the Cowboys are dealing with against the Cardinals. It is one of the most bizarre, I guess, wouldn't call it a rivalry. I guess like things going on in the NFL right now. Like, can we just call this a thing? Like, what do you call this? A curse?
Well, like, it is a curse because honestly, infamously, the Cardinals used to be in St. Louis, which is kind of close to Dallas, I guess. And for some reason, there's been a lot of animosity. The Cardinals are a franchise that have been pathetic for their entire existence, and the Cowboys historically are a very important team. The fact that the Cardinals have won 4 consecutive games against the Cowboys, despite the fact that they have been a below-average team, there is some sort of voodoo magic going on. I don't know if it's Jerry Jones, if he pissed somebody off in Scottsdale, whatever it may be, there is something going on. We see the Patriots struggle against a team like the Dolphins historically. You've seen countless times in the past, Joe Burrow struggles against the Browns. Just weird things occur, so... yeah, I don't know. There is something weird going on here.
Yeah, it says there's a lingering regional tension. Arizona was considered Cowboys country for decades, and Cardinals fans take pride in taking back their home stadium when the Cowboys fans try and fill it. It's a one-sided rivalry. Most analysts describe this as a one-way rivalry. Cardinals fans hate the Cowboys intensely, while Cowboys fans often overlook the Cardinals as a shit franchise, and the Cowboys generally play down to their competition. Kyler Murray in his career, though, including college and high school, is 9-0 in AT&T Stadium. So that also helped the past few years.
That did. So he did play well there.
But Jacoby Brissett's only win?
It's not nothing. And Jacoby Brissett, I think, also had like 500 yards in that game, too.
He had 261 yards in that one with multiple scores, but he was 1-11 as a starter last year. And Marvin Harrison Jr. had the best game of his career. Like, you can't make this shit up.
So the bigger question is, do they beat the Cardinals and defeat their demons? Or does it continue?
No, they don't.
Lose.
Carson Beck starts this game, has a generational game. I bet this is going to be the first game that Carson Beck plays for that reason.
And it'll be generational. We love to see it. And also Jeremiah Love. Let's not forget about him.
Yeah.
And then they have to continue some voodoo magic as they go to Indianapolis to take on the Colts.
Yeah, and I think they beat the Colts and move to 3-6.
All right. And then they go and host the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, and I do think they beat San Francisco here, and they're going to go and finish the season on a little bit of a heater, and this season will play out similarly to some of Houston and Cincinnati's past seasons.
All right. So then after San Francisco, they go and take on the Titans.
Yeah, and that's another one there. They're 5-6, reapproaching 500.
And then the culmination of Thanksgiving, ending with a Eagles and Cowboys face-off. I had them beating the Eagles in our prediction. Do you stay with that there?
Oh, absolutely. Now they are 6-6, starting to feel good. We're 500. We're not dead yet.
And then week 13, they go to Seattle.
Yeah, and I think they can beat Seattle. I think they have some momentum. You're coming off a mini bye, going up against the defending Super Bowl champs. No Kenneth Walker there. Some new studs on defense. I think they have the ammo to compete with Seattle.
And Marcus negates the 6-7 allegations. Nobody laughs. Nobody finds it funny because it's not 7-6 is not funny. So we storm into the bye week without the funny record, and we're pissed about it. But then they go to LA to take on the Rams.
Yeah, they go to LA to take on the Rams. I do think the Rams end their hot streak there and stop Dallas. And Dallas drops to 7-7.
Tough. But
Still
then
not as funny as 6-7 either.
Nobody thinks it was funny. 7-7 is not 6-7. Not quite. Doesn't quite tickle our fancy like you'd like. But Jacksonville comes to town. They host the Jaguars on Sunday Night Football in Week 16.
And they win. It's a beatdown. It's Sunday Night Football. This was one of those Sunday Night Football games I looked at and I was just said, disgusting. I don't want to see Trevor Lawrence on my TV. I'm not waiting all day to see Trevor Lawrence trip and fall on his face and then roll into the end zone.
Yeah.
No one wants to see this.
I'm with you there. But they are now 8-7. They go and host the Giants Week 17.
Yeah, and I think they will split with the Giants, so I have them winning this game, and they are 9-7.
All right. And then they end the season against the Commanders in FedEx Field.
I think they win that game as well and go 10-7.
All righty. So they are probably a wild card team in this projection here. Kind of start off cold. They have a tough first half of the season up until Arizona. Realistically, you got the Ravens, you have the Texans, you have the Buccaneers, you have the Giants, you have the Packers, the Eagles, and then a Cardinals team that you clearly have some sort of voodoo for. So 10-7 after a tough start to the season, getting on going on a hot streak afterwards. I can see it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Do you think that is fair? Do you think I was too harsh on the Cowboys, or do you think I think I'm pretty objective with the Cowboys. I don't hate them. They're not like the team I hate the most here. I think for a while, Dak Prescott went through a phase where he was extremely overrated, and that has cooled down with the Cowboys not being successful the past few years. So I think my animosity for the Cowboys has waned a little bit, and I can look at this team objectively. So do you think 10-7 for this team is fair?
I think that's exactly what I expect them to be. 10-7. Their defense is going to be better. Their offense should be one of the most exciting offenses in the league. I'm honestly really excited to see what Javonte Williams does because he's a guy that I still think hasn't quite broken out to what he could be. So with a better running game, with two great wide receivers there, Jake Ferguson is healthy, and with the additions on defense, I think 10-7 is definitely attainable.
Yeah, and apparently they added another good receiver in the draft here that Dak Prescott likes. So their offense should be really good. It's just going to come down to the health of Dak Prescott because it seems as if he has been consistently hurt the past few years or always dealing with something. So that is a question mark. And then just coaching.
The good news is that if Dak Prescott gets hurt, we will see Joe Milton. Or Sam Howell, but mostly Joe Milton.
I mean, Joe Milton with help. I mean, who is better, Cam Newton or Joe Milton with help? I mean, no one's ready for this conversation.
Joe Milton with help. I would say he's better than second stint Carolina Cam. Absolutely. So I'm interested. I mean, obviously we want Dak Prescott to be healthy and play a full 17 games, but in the fact that he doesn't, Joe Milton being next in line, I think NFL fans kind of want to see Joe Milton and see what he has on a regular season scale because we've only seen him really light it up in the preseason and then in a meaningless Patriots game. But other than that, we haven't seen Joe Milton do what Joe Milton does.
Then Patriots fans say, oh, can you believe we gave up Joe Milton and we're stuck with Drake May?
Yeah. But that one game, 22-29, one touchdown, 241. Pretty fun times for the
And
Patriots fans then.
say what you will about Joe Milton, he's not afraid, and he has a lot in him, and he's hyper athletic, and he has a really strong arm. So while he might not be the best quarterback per se, he is still a very dangerous athlete, and I do think he probably has more potential to sit back and learn and pick up a system than someone, say, like Anthony Richardson does. So I do think Joe Milton, with help and sitting on the bench behind Dak Prescott, learning from him, will be a dangerous player and a very formidable backup for the Dallas Cowboys this year, because he's someone who's just going to say George Pickens is out there somewhere, CeeDee Lamb is out there somewhere, and I think that is where some of these young quarterbacks go wrong, is where they are too conservative and they get too much in their head, where I would rather have a guy have 3 or 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions than 1 touchdown and no picks. Like, at least he's generating offense, and the defense has to think about George Pickens and him pushing the ball down the field. And he's someone who can get out of the pocket and scramble too, if you put all
Yeah.
of your attention to the secondary.
Yeah, I think he's got it in him. I think he's a better version of Anthony Richardson at this point. He's got a cannon of an arm. He can move really well. Um, it's been a limited showing for him, but what we've seen of him, he's got high highs and kind of low lows. But for a guy that is a sixth round pick, I kind of want to see him start a game, and maybe we see him start later in the season, um, if if it's a meaningless game. But I hope to see him out there, hopefully.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys are going to be tough to defend this year, because I don't think they need an elite running back to necessarily have a good run game, because of how much pressure George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb puts on the defense. So when you have two guys that good, Javonte Williams, he signed a 3-year extension and he rushed for over 1,200 yards last year. I do think he can take another step forward this year. So they just need a run game where they can just keep the defense honest, but they don't need it to necessarily be a running attack that picks up 1,800 scrimmage yards per se.
Yeah, I think Javonte Williams too could also get maybe 1,300 yards built on top of that. Um, they don't really have another second back for him, so I do think we could see the best of Javonte Williams is ahead.
So we have the Giants at 11-6, Philadelphia at 11-6, Dallas at 10-7, the Commanders finishing at the bottom at 6-11. What does Vegas think of
Oh,
our
that's a good point.
predictions? What are the
Yeah.
odds for Vegas? We were pretty on the money last week, for our predictions, and we've had some predictions be within a half game or only a game and a half within Vegas. And I don't look at the odds, or the record prediction for Vegas, just to keep myself honest, so I don't have any bias in my head before picking these. But even without that, we've been pretty spot on with where Vegas has been sitting. We have some picks that vary, but we're generally 75% in line with the odds makers without looking at it before picking.
Yeah, Commanders. We had them at 6 wins. Commanders over unders currently are sitting at 7.5.
Okay, yeah, if I had to guess, that's what I would think it would be. So we're within a game and a half. I would say that's fair, 7.5, and then they're just an older team. See if injuries catch up to them.
Eagles over under was 10.5. We had them at 11, so right at that
A
half
half
point
game.
right there. I can also say for the Commanders, I think we're more pessimistic on them than the rest of the NFL. I just think looking at their schedule, and then just looking at the rest of honestly, just the entire division, I just think that we're a little bit more realistic for them than a lot of others. Cowboys are at 9.5 currently, so we're about half a point there.
Whoa, okay. Half a point for the Eagles and the Cowboys, going over on both of those. So I'll take it.
And then the biggest outlier here is the Giants over under of 9.5 or 7.5. Um, so that one's the biggest outlier, I think, for us, or I should say, you had picked the Giants there. you mentioned like kind of 9-8, 11-6 is kind of their range. If you were to be bold and take this 9.5 bet, $100 to win 285. So could be a big bet there. But 7.5 is currently the Giants over under.
Yeah, $100 for 285. Like to me, that's not really worth it. I feel that's not enough money. I want if I put like $100 down, I want the chance to win at least a grand or like 10x my money. So I think the Giants are at 7.5 because Vegas is unsure of Malik Neighbors and what the offense is going to look like, and Cam Scatterbo coming off a gruesome injury. He's been drinking rain energy drinks out of a shoe, streaming. And then we have Jackson Dart, who has gone into concussion protocol every single game of his pro career. So I do think that is why they are sitting at 7.5. But if any team is going to have a losing record and double their win total next year, I do think it could be the Giants, and it's mainly because of that defense. I mean, you arguably got the best defensive player in the draft, and you're pairing him alongside Brian Burns, who's arguably a top 5 player in the NFL.
Yeah. No, it's going to be disgusting. I think their defense is going to be huge. And Jackson Dart, when he's healthy, has been very effective so far. Cam Scatterbo was effective, kind of an energizer bunny for him, too. If Malik Neighbors can be what Malik Neighbors was prior to injury, then I do think that 7.5 bet would be a good over.
Yeah, and then the Giants this year have Jameis still as their backup. So even if Jackson Dart does get hurt, Jameis Winston with help on defense. I mean, name an elite defense that. I mean, I guess Tampa did win the Super Bowl after losing Jameis Winston, so I can't say that. Actually, they did have a Super Bowl defense. Tom
but they
Brady
also acquired the
moving to
greatest of
Tampa.
all time.
What are you moving to Florida for, Tom? That's so cool.
Yeah, I think I think the fact that they acquired the greatest of all time, that kind of shells that portion. But the Saints haven't won a Super Bowl post Jameis Winston, nor have all the other teams that have joined Jameis Winston. Cleveland, where were they in the postseason? I didn't see them. So it's not nothing.
It's true. Cleveland has not had any success in the postseason post Jameis Winston. So maybe they need to do some soul searching, because I feel like the worst quarterback situation would probably have to be the Browns of any team in the NFL this year. Like, you just look around. I would honestly take the Cardinals situation with Carson Beck and Gardner Minshew. Shador Sanders, like, I think he can be okay, but he just strikes me as a Snoop Huntley type player. He doesn't really strike me as a franchise guy. And then Deshaun Watson is going to try and play as well, which is going to be a nightmare. I think the funniest scenario would be Deshaun Watson comes back and balls out, gets one more contract from a really dumb NFL team, and then dips.
Yeah. You know, the most recent saga in Cleveland is with the acquisition of Jared Verse. They gave Dylan Gabriel's number to Jared Verse without saying anything. So they went to training camp, and Jared Verse was wearing number 8, and Dylan Gabriel's like, "Hey, man, that's my jersey number." And they're like, "Oh, they gave me this jersey number, so guess not." So then he's just looking for different numbers, and the problem is that 1 through 19 is all taken already because Jared Verse already has it. So Dylan Gabriel doesn't have a number, and he's going to have like number 99 or like number 62 as a quarterback, potentially, if he plays.
That is a massive aura loss, to be honest, for a quarterback. Could he be 00? We have a quarterback with a 00 number.
I don't see why not, but I want to see him with the number 99. That would be hilarious. Nobody's been number 99 since Zadarius Smith for the Browns. And I just think a quarterback being number 99 is hilarious.
Yeah, let me see if he has a new number yet. I'm going to ask, what is Dylan Gabriel's new number? The switch from 8 for about a week of OTAs. Both Dylan Gabriel and Jared Verse were seen wearing number 8. Gabriel eventually budged, allowing Verse to take 8. Yeah, the fucking scrub gave up his number. shocked.
The fifth
Wow.
quarterback.
The fifth quarterback. It's Dylan Gabriel and the rapist. Who do you want?
Yeah, it's tough competition.
And then he is gonna. Oh, he does have a number. He's transitioning to number 6. Um,
He's
the
taking
number
Baker's number.
was most recently worn by linebacker Jeremy Owusu-Koramoah, who is out for 2026 with a neck injury. Other notable Browns quarterbacks to wear number 6: Baker Mayfield, Brian Hoyer, and Cody Kessler.
Goats.
Yeah, notable is a generous word when talking about Brian Hoyer and Cody Kessler.
But Baker Mayfield. The problem is that he's going to wear number 6 next year, if he's even on the roster. And then Carmelo is going to come back with the number 6, and it's going to be the same circumstance next year where he needs to find a new number. I think inevitably he's going to get cut. That's the obvious one. But the fact that they have 5 quarterbacks going in and he doesn't have a number, like, dude, I would just demand a release at that point.
Yeah, and it's going to be a quarterback room of Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, and 6th-round pick Talon Green. Despite rumors of him being the odd man out following the Verse trade, the team showcased his new look at minicamp with the caption, DG rocking a new look. So, I don't know.
Yeah, that definitely means he's not getting cut because they posted a photo of him. Yeah, never mind. My suspicions are gone now because they posted a picture of the 4th-string quarterback. Never mind, I stand corrected.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going to hop on the Talon Green bandwagon next year. I think that's the Browns' best bet. Get rid of Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders, and let's rock Talon Green and see what's up. Let's see what he did in college. Because the Browns need help.
Arkansas, so that's a bad sign. 6'6", 224, though.
He's a freak. Kind of a freak athlete. Looks like, yeah, probably wasn't great. He is from Louisville, Texas. And he's going to wear number 15, but you have a quarterback who's 6'6", 220. And then he completed 198 of 326 passing attempts for 2,700 yards and 19 touchdowns. Okay, I could definitely see this guy being a sleeper hit in the draft. He's a big physical player. And then he also said on Instagram he wouldn't be here without Jesus. So that is also another really good sign as well. Jesus put him in Cleveland.
That's or maybe the other guy. I don't know. Maybe the guy down below. I'm not sure. That doesn't sound like it's a Jesus thing to me.
Have you ever read the book of Job, though, where he just puts that one guy through like a bunch of torment and then sees if he'll make it out of it? I think this is
He sent him to Cleveland.
Book of Job moment. Yes, being sent to Cleveland.
Yeah, he's like, in the book of Job, we're going to send you to Cleveland, Ohio.
No, but
no,
God
please.
Put me in Cleveland.
No, please, Cincy, please.
Yeah. But
that is the NFL. That is the NBA. We have covered all things football and NBA. We gave our NFC East predictions. We'll be covering another division next week as well. But before we conclude our show, what we have been watching. What I've been watching is Obsession, but I'll start kind of with you. What have you been watching as of late?
Yeah, so this week, finally started The Wire, and I'm about 3 episodes into it, and I definitely like it so far. I have seen 3 out of the 4 kind of main shows I feel like people always bring up in the GOAT conversation, whether it's Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, and The Sopranos, but a lot of people say that The Wire is even better than The Sopranos. It's one of those shows that I just never got around to watching. I'm only 25, so don't shoot me. I haven't had time to watch every single show in existence, but I really like the atmosphere of it. The world building is really good so far. The cast is good. I like Idris Elba. There's an actor from Tulsa King in this show as well. The actor who plays Chicky in Tulsa King, like him, and then just seeing some of the world building, I can definitely see how the show's stakes are going to get raised in the future. So overall, really digging the atmosphere of Baltimore in the show. I liked Baltimore in a show when I watched We Own the City with John Bernthal, and so I'm excited to see where it goes. I think the show is 6 seasons long. A lot of people say it is their favorite show. I watched The Sopranos last year. Before that, rewatch Breaking Bad, and year before that, watch Game of Thrones. So kind of just going through what people say are the best shows of all time. So The Wire, I feel like, is one of those shows you just have to watch eventually, especially being a fan of rap. I think there's a lot of references that I'm missing to The Wire just in songs that
Yeah,
have
I
gone over
know.
my head.
Yeah, I know. Like the top five shows of all time, they typically mention those big four in those conversations. My friend Seth just finished The Wire, and he spoke very highly of it. Didn't know. I think he had The Sopranos just slightly above it, but it does showcase Baltimore pretty well. I know the people of Baltimore really appreciate The Wire, but often rated as one of the higher rated shows. I like that it covers kind of different themes throughout each season. I haven't personally watched it, but it is just one of those shows that anytime you're in that conversation for best of all time, it's always in that conversation. And it's a show that didn't overstay its welcome either. It only aired from 2002 to 2008, so it didn't stay and linger like a Walking Dead or Stranger Things or some of those other shows that just lasted way too long. They were in 2002 and out by beginning of 2008. So I just feel like they had that perfect window, and they didn't let it become stale, which I think could be a benefit to it.
Yeah, and it started during The Sopranos, so that is also one of the best times for TV. I think The Sopranos started in the 90s, right, and then ended up finishing in 2006 or 2007, if I'm not mistaken, because they did
Yeah.
the last season of The Soprano in two parts. So, yeah, it's interesting that you had both those shows that people say are potentially the best TV shows of all time back to back. So yeah, I'm excited to continue with The Wire here. I think what I've read and so far, the impression I'm getting, this show is a lot more world building than The Sopranos, where there's a lot more just focus on the institutions, whether it is the family that Idris Elba is running or the different police institutions in Baltimore. Then you also have the crackhead homeless person that the police use who just spies on the gang. He's kind of the ears who sees everything that happens on the street there. So I do think, as far as a massive world, they've done a good job just setting everything up where I'm not terribly lost through the first three episodes. So I think, yeah, we'll see how it ends in season one. But so far, I think it's pretty well done so far.
Yeah, and I know as far as like the IMDb top 250 shows of all time, they put The Wire at number three, just below Breaking Bad and The Sopranos, as far as highly rated. So it is
But they
considered
have
one
it
of the
four.
greatest. They have it here as the highest rated TV shows ever. Breaking Bad 9.5. Oh, actually, it's number two is Band of Brothers, which I've never heard of, and then
Fair.
The Wire at 9.3.
Band of Brothers is awesome. Also might be one of the best shows of all time. So I definitely think it's fair to have Band of Brothers there. I watched that show last summer and it was really good. You essentially follow this group of soldiers from D-Day all the way to Germany, and then they one of the episodes they actually go to Hitler's house at the end of the war in the mountains there. But I could definitely see Band of Brothers being put up there. But it's interesting that like three of the top five shows are about are gang related. in a sense, where you have Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, and The Wire.
Yeah. People just like drugs, apparently. But yeah, it is interesting. I think there is definitely an audience there. And then, um, but yeah, I think you'll play. I think you'll like it. I don't know how many episodes they have of it, but it seems like each season is kind of a little different. 60 total episodes, so you should be able to bang that out probably within, especially with your vacation, potentially some time in there. So I think you'll like it overall.
Yeah, we'll see if we have signal, or if Bigfoot allows us to watch The Wire in the mountains. I'm not sure if Bigfoot likes when people watch shows in the woods, but hopefully we have signal in the mountains in the Pacific Northwest. But you watched Obsession. Obsession is kind of on a generational run right now. $750,000 budget, passed over $100 million globally, I believe. So the hype is real. This is also a Gen Z director where we have now two prominent Gen Z directors breaking out this year with Obsession, and this is a horror movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so it's essentially following this guy who likes this girl, Nikki. Um, Beginning of the movie, he's essentially rehearsing, telling her his feelings about her, and then after not ended up like telling her how he feels, he makes a wish to this like magic wish place at a Chinese store to essentially wish that she loved him more than anybody else. And then immediately after the fact, she becomes essentially like a stage five clinger. Immediately, just obsessed with him. Um, and then throughout the movie, it just slowly progresses into this sort of demonic possession like character, but not in the sense of a normal possession. It's not like she's killing people relentlessly with no kind of appeal there. Half of the time, you'll see her snap out of character, and she's like, What's going on here? I don't understand." But the movie is really, really, really well done. You're just kind of captured from the start. I wanted to see this with a couple of people, but they bailed. And as far as myself, I've only seen a movie alone in a theater twice in my life. This and when I saw Nope when that came out. Um, and if I'm seeing a movie alone in the theaters, I want to pop a gummy, sit in the back, and be surrounded by nobody. So this movie, obviously, this is probably the biggest movie of the year at this point. Probably the biggest movie, probably since Barbie Oppenheimer. It's on track to make $400 million at this point. So it's generational. It's also the first movie since E.T. to have increasing box office returns each week, the first 4 weeks that it's come out. So it's kind of insane what's going on. This is kind of like a cultural phenomenon.
Since
Um,
E.T. That's a
yeah,
very bizarre. Huh.
yeah, it's pretty crazy what's going on. But the whole movie, it essentially just continues to progress into Nikki just being crazier and crazier. Um, so like it initially starts, he breaks the wish, breaks the dream, essentially so that he can have her be madly in love with him, and then they kind of have a short romantic sketch, and then he has to go to work, and she just basically just continues to unravel, becomes crazier. But what the cool part about this movie is that it's somewhat of a possession movie, but it's also kind of just a modern take on the horror genre. The woman that plays Nikki does an incredible job. She's one of those characters that we're going to talk about for a long time. Um, and then just overall, the acting, this bear character is definitely a very unlikable character. As throughout this movie, he can't decide whether he wants to get his dick wet or help his friend that's clearly like possessed and not the normal Nikki that he fell in love with. Um, at one point in the movie, she is sleeping, and this like whatever beast has possessed her is like she's essentially talking through. She's like, "Help me, kill me, whatever," and he's like, his exact response back is, he's like, "What's so bad with being with me?" So there's like the thing about this movie is like there's certain moments in this movie that are actually just funny. Um, it's a pretty overall like pretty funny. So after this whole events occur, and he's going to tell his friend that he needs to help Nikki, and he essentially comes to him and says, "Hey, I need you to unwish my wish. So I wish that you would make my essentially just wish that you can break my wish. And this guy's looking at him like any other person would. He's like, "Oh, you're insane." So when it comes to make his wish, he just goes, "I wish for $1 billion," and he breaks it, and then $1 billion just pours from the sky immediately, which is a funny scene there. And then there's another girl that is interested in Bear, and she helps him like meet up with him to essentially cheat on Nikki with him at 3 a.m. And everything's going really well, and they're talking and they're expressing their feelings for each other. And then just out of the blue, Nikki just comes in, and it's somewhat like of a jump scare. She just slams her head against the steering wheel, like over and over and over again, and it's just like it's a jump scare, so it scares you, but it's like a funny jump scare. It was very unique, but this is a movie that is going to go down as, I mean, it already is historic at this point, but genuinely, a lot of times movies are hyped and then maybe they're not worth the hype. I think of movies like Gravity, Oppenheimer, movies that are hyped
Gravity.
up. They say it's this great movie, and then you see it and it's kind of underwhelming. This is one of those movies that is actually worth all of the hype. And I feel like come Halloween season, this is going to be a movie that's consistently played during the holiday season. So, definitely generational, iconic. Probably going to win a few Oscars eventually. So, yeah, this is a big moment. Definitely recommend seeing it.
Yeah, it sounds like a really interesting concept. Definitely an interesting take on the horror genre. And if you're going to make a ton of money, horror is definitely the genre to do it, where you don't necessarily need to blow a massive budget on special effects for horror. It's really just about cinematography. And honestly, horror is a very technical genre where how do you film something and build tension. So I'm excited to see what this director does in the future, and I could see this movie coming back into theaters for Halloween. With how you described it, it does sound like a really funny movie and a movie I would like as well. um, it kind of reminds me like of The Gift, which is a movie with Joel Edgerton and Jason Bateman, that Jason Bateman directed. That was a really cool horror movie about a stalker. Um, and if you've dealt with someone who's like very clingy or obsessed in real life, I think a lot of people can relate to that. Doesn't happen to everyone, but I can say from experience, it's not fun.
I think that's what makes this so attractive is like this feels like it's like the first Gen Z horror movie, and it's more or less I think a lot of people who have had funny relationship outbreaks or maybe dealt with somebody who's a little bit more attached than you are. It's something that I think a lot of people can relate to, especially in the modern era. Um, so yeah, I think as far as it's a fresh take. The director I think is obviously going to get a lot of buzz, especially after this. Um, and then the actress that plays Nikki is kind of becoming an overnight sensation. So this is a moment in history. I feel like, especially with what it's doing at the box office, especially with how well this movie was made. Um, this is going to be something that's. I feel like we're entering into a new era of filmmaking now with some of these people, especially with the Backrooms also doing very well. Another low budget horror movie that's done really well. This feels like it's a step in a new era for film.
Yeah, and I heard Backrooms was a little bit underwhelming from some people I know who saw it, but even still, the fact that I think Obsession did get people back into the theater, got them excited to see movies again. Um, and it's not that people don't want to go to the theater, it is just there hasn't been enough to get you really out of your house to see a movie in theater, something to be excited and doesn't feel like you're going to have this cultural moment where even people were really excited for Christopher Nolan's new movie The Odyssey, and then the hype for that has kind of died down a little bit. How many new like superhero movies are people going to want to see? Like superhero movies perform pretty poorly in their second week in the box office last year, where Superman, if you count inflation, still didn't do better than Man of Steel. Man of Steel was still the better movie, so I think like we're in an era where people are just looking for something new, fresh, and original, and people still go out there to see a movie because I think people are just looking for more. I think retro is kind of back in style. Like there's a lot of tree camo. Like even style wise, clothes are a little bit more baggy. You have like the broccoli haircut, mullets are kind of coming back into style. So I do think people are looking for more nostalgia and more things like going to see a movie, more outdoor activities, and people are getting sick of just sitting on their phone all day. So I do think TikTok brain is a thing, but with nostalgia kind of being the trend, authenticity kind of being the trend, a movie like this just being super relatable, a lot of people can latch onto it. Like, oh yeah, I totally get that. And this movie's also funny and original, and they didn't blow out a VFX budget for it. Like, this is what Hollywood needs to take a look at and learn from, where it doesn't matter if you spend $100 million on a movie.
Yeah, I think the reason why I say it's kind of a step in a new direction for filmmaking is they see this movie that cost $1 million have this global sensation, and then I look back at movie events like Barbie and Oppenheimer. You had like the Minions kind of thing where they had people coming in fancy suits for it. Back in the day, those moments were when E.T. came out, when Jaws came out, when Star Wars came out, Indiana Jones. These major movie releases that were kind of like a social event. I feel like that's how people get back to theaters. It's not about seeing. They have He-Man coming out later this month, which looks stupid. Masters of the Universe, and then
Oh
they got
no.
like Mandalorian slop coming out. There's all these new Marvel movies. Like I think people are kind of sick of the big budget slop that we've been releasing the last 10 years, and people are more interested in seeing something fresh and something that isn't in your face. So I hope Hollywood sees this and realizes what exactly is attractive about Obsession is not about this big flashy budget, but just something new and something original that isn't some $200 million CGI slop fest.
Yeah, and it's not a like small Oscar movie either, where people are, oh well, no one's gonna know about this Oscar movie because no one watched it. Well, no one, like, not everyone wants to go to the movie to like watch like a lecture where there's some interesting themes in this movie, but it doesn't seem like you're just being talked at. Where it feels like a lot of movies just talk at you, and a lot of like new blockbuster movies re-explain the plot to you like you're five, and then there's not there hasn't been like any like blockbuster movies I've watched recently where I've been on the end of my edge of my seat, or that have had like really good action set pieces or tension here. It just kind of comes and goes. Not really anything different, but I'm excited that this movie came out and is actually making waves where now it's Obsession and ET.
Yeah, it's insane. And usually what happens in the movie releases is that all your money is essentially made in the first week and then you'll see like a 50% drop from there. That's pretty standard. This movie each and every week has gone up in the box office returns. So I think if it continues its momentum, I think this is a movie that's going to play all throughout the summer, and then potentially that re-release during the Halloween season. Because I do think that this could be kind of like during the Christmas times when we watch Home Alone. Come Halloween time, we watch Obsession.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and it'll probably come out around Halloween streaming. Do you know, was it Warner Brothers who did this, or is this Paramount?
This should be on Peacock when it's all said and done, I believe.
Got it.
Who's going to
Okay.
distribute it? But what they did originally was only supposed to be in theaters for like 6 weeks, but given its theatrical success, they extended the movie theater run and delayed the streaming release. So now they're expecting that to come later, given the fact that it's still pouring people in. I went on a Tuesday. Granted, I do live in Arizona and I live in Phoenix, so it's going to be a little busier, but there was a packed audience at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday. And you really can't go to any theater right now and not see Obsession be sold out. So I feel like the word of mouth is only getting stronger, and we could be seeing maybe the most successful small budget success story in box office history potentially.
Yeah, and even China likes this movie. The film in China outperformed Mandalorian and Grogu. Not surprised there. And then received high praise from Chinese audience, with viewers calling it masterpiece on social media, and has
Yeah.
been described with terms like "goated movie" in China. Oh, goated movie.
No, I can say that this is a masterpiece. This is one of the best horror movies I've seen in quite some time. So I definitely recommend seeing it, whether it's in the theaters or when it's on streaming.
Wow. Well, we covered a lot of history today. Talked about the NBA Finals, with this being the first time that, only the second time that after the first two home games have been lost, that the um, road team followed that up with a win. And this is the first time it happened since the Bulls started out 2-0 versus the Phoenix Suns in 1993. We talked about the Arizona Cardinals being 8-10 versus the Dallas Cowboys. And we also previewed the entire NFC East, talked about Obsession, intro to The Wire as well, first couple episodes. So make sure you hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, go back and watch our other previews for each division. We've done the South so far in the NFC East. We're going to continue to do that leading into the NFL season. But until we're back,